Sam, being the world's best book boyfriend, replies, "I could wait. We have all the time in the world." And the chapter ends, which is really unfortunate because they do not, in fact, have all the time in the world.
I know. I wrote, it's like reverse foreshadowing. They definitely do not have all the time. They have about 3 days tops.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Booked on Fantasy podcast. We, Addison and Lorraine, are two best friends who explore the wonderful world of fantasy through books, shows, and movies, but with a heavy emphasis on books. Today, we're covering the fifth and final story in the Assassin's Blade titled The Assassin and the Empire. The story officially concludes our coverage of The Assassin's Blade, and it definitely confirmed what we had largely suspected regarding Celaena's betrayal and capture. And now we can, with full confidence, declare that we hate Arobynn Hamel.
Absolutely. No question. I have a lot of thoughts about this, as I'm sure you do as well. I mean, fuck that guy. That's really all I have to say. And, you know, I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. We predicted a long time ago. We were pretty sure that Arobynn was responsible for Celaena's betrayal and capture. And of course, that's kind of heavily implied, but it does feel good to be right about that. Well, It doesn't feel good. It feels bad that it happened, but you know, at least we got something right on this podcast.
I know. Now I look forward to some kind of revenge taking place against this man.
Oh my God.
I can't wait. We'll see if it happens in Air of Fire. But
I hope so. Oh God, please. I would be absolutely stunned, shocked, just flabbergasted if we never see Arobynn Hamel again. I don't know if it'll be an Air of Fire, but I'm pretty sure he has to come up, right? He has to.
I would think so.
Yeah. I just don't know in how much of Air of Fire we actually are in Wendland versus if we go to Rifthold. Because I don't think Arobynn would show up in Wendland. That seems really unlikely. Whereas, obviously, if we go back to Rifthold. So that's really the question.
I really don't see Celaena letting it go once she finds out.
She better not.
I do feel like he's gonna hopefully die. So, all right. As a quick reminder, we will be discussing this story specifically, but it is likely that references to Throne of Glass or Crown of Midnight will come up as well. If you haven't started TOG and you don't want any spoilers, pause here and then come back when you're caught up. Otherwise, the series is brand new to us, so you won't be getting any spoilers for the rest of the series. But you will, of course, be getting plenty of unhinged theories, so you've been warned. Furthermore, we would like to remind everyone that this is an adult podcast where we'll have explicit conversations. Explicit language or potentially triggering topics may be discussed, so please be mindful of that and adjust accordingly. Housekeeping. If you are enjoying this podcast so far, then the very best way for you to support the show is to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review or rating. This greatly helps us on the podcast platforms so we can grow our community of book lovers and continue making content for everyone. Next week, we will start our Air of Fire coverage. If you are reading along with us, then we will be starting with chapters 1 through 7. So excited. I can't wait.
I know. It feels like we've had such a long break from where we left off in Calm. I don't know if I'm ready. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm excited. I'm just ready.
Same. And then, of course, last but not least, Addison, where are we at with the Onyx Storm countdown?
All right. Today is August 25th, and we are recording right now. Dang it. I psyched myself out. But there are 149 days until Onyx Storm is released.
I think you should just keep saying,
you know what?
How You're it is, you know?
I'm just going to own it. Today, the day we're recording, that's the day.
Exactly.
I'm going to own it. Yeah.
All right, so that is all for housekeeping, and next we're going to get into the episode. Given that this is the end of the book, we will start with the book report for chapter summaries. Next, we will dive into an analysis and offer theories for each chapter. Then we will do our final thoughts on the book and any other questions or predictions we have moving forward. And then, of course, finally, we will wrap up with our favorite moments. With that being said, Addison, please give us the book report.
Happily. As usual with our summary,
because of the way that tab is constructed, I will not be doing individual chapter summaries. Instead, I will be summarizing the whole story. The Assassin and the Empire. After. Curled in the corner of a prison wagon, Celaena Sardothian, Otterland's assassin, Arobynn's protege, Sam's lover, well, formerly, and now fallen assassin, watches as the world passes by on her way to Endovier, with only one question echoing in her mind. Had she brought this upon herself? 11 days earlier, Celaena was an idiot. Why had she tortured herself coming back to the theater knowing full well that Arobynn would be there and likely with Lysandra in her spot? But Celaena couldn't resist. She loved the music. But somehow things didn't feel quite the same and Celaena exited, stage left. Celaena makes her way to the apartment that she and Sam now share. When she arrives, there is no trace of Sam save for a vague note indicating that he was out. But Celaena knew exactly where Sam was and was not happy about it. With blade strapped on, Celaena makes her way to the vaults, the disgusting underbelly of Rifthold that also houses the fighting pits. Celaena watches on as Sam gives the crowd a show. Celaena hated the fighting pits. They were dangerous. Here, there was one rule and one rule only. No weapons, just fists. Sam is victorious, no surprise there, and Celaena gives Sam the "it's time to leave" nod. And then the real fight began. As they make their way back to the apartment, Sam and Celaena argue about his fighting for sport. Celaena insists that it's dangerous, while Sam insists that he's perfectly safe, and more importantly, they need the money. Especially given Celaena's luxury lifestyle. And boy, he ain't wrong. They finally agree the best thing for them to do is to move away from Rifthold, but our hero and heroine are learning a hard lesson. Everything has a price. Get it? If you know, you know. Celaena tells Sam that before they can do anything, they need to get Arobynn's blessing to leave the guild. Sam and Celaena make their way to the guild, and Celaena oh so sweetly asks Arobynn for his blessing. In true Arobynn fashion, he gives them the runaround, but eventually agrees to let them leave for an exorbitant fee that happens to be the exact amount of money Celaena has left in her bank account. What a coincidence! Sam is big mad. After they leave, they argue yet again. Sam wants to tell Arobynn to kick rocks, while Celaena sees the wisdom in parting on good terms. Otherwise, they'll be looking over their shoulders for the rest of their lives. A frustrated Sam goes on a walk to clear his head while Celaena heads to the apartment. As she walks, she passes the glass castle and can't help but feel a deep sense of foreboding. We've now reached the part of the story where Addison will try to show some restraint and contain her obvious annoyance at the decisions made by these two for the rest of the story. Sam returns, and what luck! A client approached him with a contract for not one, but 2 assassins that pays an unbelievable amount of money, and all they have to do is take out the 2 most difficult targets, Io Jane and Rorik Farron, in all of Rifthold. And did I mention that this client doesn't want the guild to be involved? It's almost as if this offer is too good to be true. Celaena tells Sam she will think about the job, and Sam kisses her. Things take quite a steamy turn when Sam takes Celaena to the bedroom with a question in his eyes. But Celaena tells him not yet. Sam responds with, "I can wait. We have all the time in the world." It's a lazy morning in bed, and Celaena tells a sleepy Sam that she will go after Jane and Farron. She begins to formulate a plan, and Sam mumbles for her to go back to sleep. The two spend the day gathering info on Jane and tailing Farron. Farron makes his way to his carriage and gives Celaena a creepy and knowing smile that somehow these two didn't find suspicious in the least. Sam and Celaena agree that Sam will take out Farron first and Celaena will take out Jane the following day. Celaena wants them to work together, but Sam insists that he can do it on his own and that he wants to keep Celaena away from the danger as long as possible. A reluctant Celaena agrees. Of course, I'm not at all frustrated by this decision. Later that day, Celaena attends her dance class with Madame Florine, and when she returns to her apartment, a familiar voice says, "Hello, darling." Why did I just make him British? Whoops. Anyways, Arobynn is there and immediately begins to question why Sam and Celaena are attempting to take on the 2 most dangerous criminals in all of Rifthold. Arobynn then tries to drive a wedge between Sam and Celaena by insinuating that she may not trust Sam as much as she thinks she does. When that doesn't work, Arobynn has a moment of emotional vulnerability where he tells Celaena he loves her. Sure. After dinner at their favorite tavern, Sam can tell something is off with Celaena. Instead of telling him about Arobynn's visit, she asks him to tell her his secrets. Our golden retriever tells Celaena his only secret was that he had always loved her. Celaena admits that deep down she is a coward and is always afraid. Sam shares with her his trick for when he is afraid. He simply tells himself, "My name is Sam Cortland, and I will not be afraid." They spend another day trailing Farron all over the city and end up at the vaults. A horrified Sam and Celaena watch as Farron takes a fighter who owes Jane money and tried to cheat his way out of it to a private room below the vaults. They listen in stunned silence as the man begins to scream. Just as Sam makes a move to intervene, Celaena convinces Sam to leave. As they walk, Sam worries that they are no better than Farron, but Celaena assures him that there is a line and they never cross it. They go over the plan, and Sam tells Celaena while he is killing Farron that night, she will be packing for the southern continent. Celaena stares at the clock. How could a single minute last so long? In an attempt to take her mind off Sam and the mission, she tries her best to pack and recalls how Sam informed her he would not be traveling with her dozens of shoes. How dare he? The clock strikes 11 and Celaena heads out into the streets, but convinces herself that Sam is probably already on the way home and he would be there waiting for her when she arrived. But Sam wasn't there waiting. Celaena falls asleep watching the minutes tick by. She awakens at dawn and frantically begins searching the streets of Rifthold. In her desperation, she convinces herself that Sam must be at home waiting for her to board the ship to the southern continent. But when she arrived, that same familiar voice uttered the words, "I'm sorry." In a blind rage, Celaena hurls the clock across the room and storms out of the apartment and makes her way to the Assassin's Keep where Sam's body is. Arobynn pleads with Celaena to stop and insists it's better for her not to see. But nothing would stop Celaena, but the small lingering hope that she had that this was all a big mistake is extinguished when she sees Sam's body on the wooden table. A broken Celaena lies next to him. She couldn't leave him. Celaena awakens in her old bed in the Assassin's Keep. The reality of Sam's death hits her and she lays in bed, watching the shift of shadow patterns on the wall as the sun sets. Later on, she overhears Arobynn and several of the other assassins discussing their plan for retaliation over Sam's death. A dark, rippling rage courses through Celaena, and she formulates her plan to get revenge on Farron. As she leaves the keep, she is intercepted by Wesley, who tries to warn her. "Don't you see, it's all just, But Celaena knocks him out before he can finish. Celaena makes her way to Farron's house and decides she will leap through the second-story window. Celaena takes a deep breath and gives herself a running start and makes her leap. Celaena lands right in the middle of a meeting and utter pandemonium ensues. Fists and blades fly and her dagger hits its mark right in Jane's neck. As she makes her way to Farron, she notices that all the guards are wearing strange black masks, but she's too late. The gas pours into the room and darkness consumes her. She comes to and is face to face with none other than Rorik Farron. He tells her that the Gloriella will eventually wear off and give her a classic creepy, "Here's my master plan" speech. He tells her a deal was made. He kills Sam, she goes berserk and kills Jane, and he gets to take Jane's place. He departs with a final blow to her face, and the world goes black again. When Celaena wakes up, she realizes that she is in the royal dungeon. She quickly realizes there is no way to escape, and she is truly and utterly trapped. She begins to dwell on how she failed, and when the roaring silence came to claim her again, she embraced it with open arms. The next day is Celaena's private trial before the king, and she can't bring herself to utter a single word in her defense. The king gives her a final opportunity to speak, and Celaena tells the king to make it quick. Instead, the king sentences her to 9 lives of labor in the salt mines of Endovier and to be kept alive at all costs to maximize her suffering. Later on, Farron and Arobynn watch the prison wagon leave the castle on the rooftops of Rifthold. Farron asks if he's going to rescue her, noting that it would be easier than what he had planned originally. But Arobynn says no. Farron asks the question we've all been wondering. Why did Arobynn do it? Arobynn simply responds with, "Because I don't like sharing my belongings." One thing is certain, both Celaena and I forgot one very important thing. Who Arobynn Hamel was and what he was capable of. After. Celaena had been in the cold, desolate prison wagon for 2 days. She is awakened by the excited whispers of the guards and looks out the tiny window and sees a sacred white stag of Terrasen. Celaena felt the warmth of her tears before she realized she was crying. She hears the unmistakable sound of bowstrings being pulled back and screams at the stag to run. In the silence that followed, fear, ravenous and cold, dragged her under. Beginning. Celaena Sardothian knew she was nearing the salt mines of Endovier when the trees of Oakwald gave way to the jagged gray mountains that pierced the sky. Endovier. She wasn't ready. Wasn't ready to face a world without Sam. a world where she had failed him. A soft breeze filled the wagon, a breeze that carried the scent of snow and pine, a breeze from a world long burned to ash by the King of Arobynn. With a sudden spark of resolve and hope, Celaena Sardathian stood and walked into the salt mines of Endovier with a singular thought echoing in her mind. My name is Celaena Sardathian, and I will not be afraid. Woo! What a way to end the story.
All right. Thank you so much for the summary of this short story. And now let's get into the analysis.
Absolutely. Also, this is totally off topic, but for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I just realized something hilarious. In my video, you can see there's like 4 different lamps because I'm moving. If you guys have been listening for a while, you know. And so I put all my lamps in one room so I can have the movers pack them because I'm terrified for them to get damaged. And I just realized you can see like 4 different lampshades and it looks totally crazy. So
it looks kind of aesthetic though. It's kind of nice.
It's kind of a vibe. I know.
Yeah. Some of them look like they're those little foldable lantern lights, you know, that you like.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Because your head blocks the stand on some of them.
Yeah, so
they look like they're just hanging from the ceiling. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. If you don't watch on YouTube, we post all our content there as well. Shorts, reels, as well as the videos. So if you guys just ever want to see our beautiful faces and just see our hilarious reactions, please feel free to watch that.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm excited about this part of the episode. I wrote a novel for this. Okay. So I have 2 sections and I'm just bubbling with enthusiasm. So I'm just going to jump in. So before we actually start the analysis of the chapters, Addison has a lot of thoughts. Okay. And we're just going to, I guess that's what a podcast is for, right? So the first thing I want to do is call attention to the physical book cover of The Assassin's Blade. I honestly didn't really look at it until this story. I don't know why, but I guess I was just like idly observing it. And there is a silhouette of what I can only assume is a sacred white stag through the trees of a forest. And I think that the cover is a direct depiction of the end of this short story when Celaena sees the white stag on the way to Endovier. And we will definitely talk more about the symbolism of the white stag when we get there. But I did just want to point that out because I thought that was kind of a nice tie-in. And I'm like, oh my God, I literally didn't notice it until we finished the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Next, a commentary on this short story overall. I thought this short story was almost singularly plot-driven. There's little to no character development to me. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. I think the purpose of the story is more to inform the reader and what transpired. And that sets you up for how this affects Celaena's character development on. So overall, I did like the story. I thought it was good. You know, there was nothing wrong with it, but I felt like it was missing some kind of emotional connection maybe for me, despite the stuff with Sam, because I really feel like it was just this happens and this happens. It's really just a chain of events. And then there's not a lot of time for like Celaena to process and for us to see how she deals with it and everyone's emotions. It's really just like boom, 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 boom. And now we're in Endovier, in my opinion.
Okay. That's interesting. I agree that it was very fast paced and quick moving. Like you said, once one event happens, there's just a cascade of other things that continue on. But I feel like there was a little bit of insight into Celaena's mindset, at least. And then we get a little bit of relationship building between Sam and Celaena. But more so, I think it's just insight into what caused her to be so. Well, she was depressed when she learned Sam died, and then she gets thrown into prison and she continuously succumbs to this roaring silence. And I think is basically just numb for a lot of what was going on because she just didn't know what to do. But I do think that this sets us up for the mindset of all the reference to things of when she snapped in Endovier and all of that stuff. So I felt like it personally helped understand why Celaena was the way that she was throughout Throne of Glass. Because I think that was something that I found to be a little bit annoyed about previously. I'd be like, why is she so like, like why is she so resistant? Why is she so against helping with all of this stuff? But given the background that we've gotten now with Assassin's Blade, it helps to reframe, in my opinion. So
yes. Well, I absolutely agree with you in the sense of Tab as a whole body of work, But for this story specifically, I didn't feel like I got that. But as a
Gotcha.
general statement for Tab, absolutely. And I have a lot to say about that. A lot. So the next thing in relation specifically to this short story is I am so annoyed at Sam and Celaena for being so fucking stupid. There were so many inflection points where they should have stopped and said, the math ain't mathin'. For example, right after they talk to Arobynn and he wants the exact sum of money that Celaena has remaining in her bank account. And then mere hours later, a rando has a contract for not one, but 2 assassins. That's too good to be true. And they don't question it. It's maddening. I just was like, you two, how fucking stupid can you be? I feel like a lot of what they talk about with Arabynn's training is they train them to think and assess and don't just jump into things. It's like, how did your brain not stop and think about these circumstances and processes, whatever. I feel like part of being an assassin, a big part of your mindset is like, there's no such thing as a coincidence. It's just like in The Assassin in the Underworld where you're like, Donoval's main bodyguard was nowhere to be seen. Guess he was on break. Like, no, bitch, he was waiting so he could fucking attack you. I'm sorry. It drove me nuts. And so I'm going to be pointing out all of these instances as we go through the story. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. But it's so ridiculous to me. It's almost so bad it made the story unbelievable to me that they could both of them together be so dense. Oh,
I did try to point it out to Sam, but then I think because she really wanted things to be good with Sam because they finally had that time together. And so I think she set aside her questions to appease Sam and like let themselves believe that things were going to work out for them, which I agree was really dumb. And I agree there were plenty of points where they could have stopped and been like, this is really weird. I felt that more so when Celaena, less so at the beginning. I mean, yes, it was very obvious that the circumstances under which they got this final job was just way too easy, way too coincidental
it
that
fell into
I
their
would like
lap.
question this a little bit more. But my main frustration was actually more with Celaena not going to check on Sam sooner.
Oh my God.
That
yes.
part I really got to because I was like, you spent so much time
Yes.
wasting. And I think that obviously becomes a large part of something that she regrets and feels very guilty about later on. But I was like, the moment an assassin didn't come back around within 30 minutes of the time they said they should be coming back, right? You had to know something was off. I don't know.
I have a lot of thoughts about that. And especially like with the aerial spotting and everything and the plan they laid out. So we'll definitely talk about that when we get there. But you're absolutely right. And then last but certainly not least, just in relation to this story before I get to my TED Talk, is unpopular opinion, but Sam's death just didn't bother me that much. Don't get me wrong. I thought his death was gruesome and horrible, and I feel bad for him, and I feel so bad for Celaena. But I was not emotionally devastated or damaged. I didn't even tear up. I was just like, well, this happened. And I feel this is for 2 main reasons, okay? The first is we just don't know Sam that well. There's 5 stories in this book. He's not even in 2 of them. And the 3 other stories he's in, he's just not prominently featured. I just don't feel connected enough to him to really miss him as a character. And if you recall, for those of you that have been listening with us for a while, I had a very similar complaint about Nehemia. We just don't really get to know either of them as a character. So when they die, you're just like, I don't really feel like anything's missing from the story. It's mostly sad because Celaena's sad, not because I'm like, oh, Sam, he had my heart and he was so wonderful. And the little bit we do get with him, he's great, but not enough for me to care. And honestly, I feel like his character is a little generic in a way, right? What do we know about his personality? Just that he loves Celaena. And that's really it. I thought even Rolf the Pirate Lord had more of a personal flair than Sam did in a weird way. Or like even the spider silk merchant in the Fast in the Red Desert. I found myself very drawn to that scene. And the scenes with Sam, I'm just like, oh, this is nice. They're cute together in a relationship. But there's no draw for me. And I don't know, unpopular opinion. Don't come for me, but I'm sorry, it's true. I said what I said.
I like Sam. I will agree that I didn't really feel like his death was that tragic. Not that it wasn't tragic, but that it didn't emotionally damage me in a way that other characters
Yes.
would probably later on. But I think that had more to do with the fact that I already knew he was going to die than it was
Yes.
about Sam necessarily himself. Because I
Totally.
think there's a cute romantic aspect to the fact that he was the first person that Celaena really let in, and the bond that they formed after that. I appreciated that. I thought it was refreshing that Sam was very open with her and never faltered in his loyalty to her and how he felt about her. I think that was nice. Because I think with the other characters that you had mentioned, there's like that mysteriousness, right? You don't really quite know what their deal is. You have questions about them. You want to know what's going on. But with Sam, he's basically just like an open book. He's like
Lorraine.
a golden retriever. So
That's absolutely accurate. And Lorraine, I just had a realization as you were talking. You know why? Not that I don't like Sam, but you get what I mean. Why I don't like Sam? Because he's not a shadow daddy. He's not morally great. He's a golden retriever. He's boring. I don't care about him.
yeah,
I want to give me a shadow daddy I can get invested in. A complex, dark, broody guy. That's what I like. That's why Sam like, well, bye. Honestly, in a weird way, not like in a romantic way, but I really like Arobynn's character because he's just so dark. And no, he's not really morally great. He's just bad. But, you know, he's just dark and devious. And you're like, what are his motivations? What is his past? Like, what drives him? You know, that's more exciting to me. Whereas Sam, I'm like, yeah, he's just a golden retriever. So, yeah. Exactly what you said pretty much leads me into my next point. And this is going to lead me into our next section of this episode, which is when Lorraine and I are going to debate where Tab should be read in the series. But I really didn't get upset because for the entire book, I knew Sam's fate. I knew he was going to die. So it took away the surprise element. And I think my brain was like, Addison, do not get attached. And so it prevented me from allowing myself to get emotionally invested in Sam and his relationship with Celaena because I already knew that from reading TOG. So it just didn't have the emotional impact that I felt like it would have perhaps otherwise.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. You can tell I just said, I've been holding this all in. Man, I finished Tab and I was like, oh my God, I have so many things to say. Okay. So the next part of our episode, before we actually get into the chapter analysis, is Lorraine and I are going to have a little debate about where Tab should be read. And I'm going to say a lot of things in rapid succession. So just buckle up, everybody, okay? Because I have a whole thing typed out. Okay, so really quick little prelude, I guess. Sure, that word works. Really quick prelude here. For those of you who have not been listening with us from the very beginning, there is a debate in the TOG community about where Tab should be read. Some people say it should be read chronologically before TOG. Some people say it should be read TOG, Calm, then Tab. Some people even say it should be TOG, Calm, Era Fire, then Tab. Okay. I would say that last group are like in the minority. In my opinion, based just on my perspective of the internet, most people think Tab should be read after Calm. And that's why we decided to do it on this podcast. Keep in mind, Lorraine and I have never read this series. And so we really just had to guess based on research without spoilers. The last thing I want to add to that is we did like a more in-depth overview in the very first episode of TOG. So if you want like more in-depth analysis about that, go listen to TOG 1 through 7. That being said, Sarah J. Maas on her website, I believe her preferred posted reading order is TOG, Calm, then Tab, and then Air Fire with the rest of the series. So I absolutely cannot believe I am saying this because going into the series, I thought I was going to be a die-hard Tab should always be read after Calm or even potentially Air Fire. I don't know why, but I was like, this is how you're supposed to do it. And I have spent a lot of time thinking about this and debating it in my mind while I packed millions and millions of moving boxes. And I cannot believe I'm saying this. I think Tab should be read first. And I feel very, very, very strongly about this. And I'm going to tell you why. Before we begin, I just want to insert yet another spoiler warning here. We are going to be referencing major, major spoilers for TOG and Calm. If you have not read those or listened to those, stop here now because I'm going to reference major events. You have been warned. Okay? All right.
Yes.
Welcome to Addison's TED Talk. Okay. First and foremost, I feel Tab does a fantastic job of contextualizing a lot of formidable experiences for Celaena's character. All of these stories are absolutely critical in shaping who Celaena is. And I think reading Tab first makes TOG and Calm a much more interesting read because you understand her character better. We know from TOG, in that little scene she has with Dorian, that Sam is dead. Okay, you know that very early on in the book. You don't know who Sam is or why he's important, but you know he's dead. Knowing that information immediately changes the reading experience. While it does make Celaena's character more tragic, it completely alters the experience of reading Tab. Imagine how much more devastating and shocking and emotional Tab would be if you didn't know Sam was going to die, when you first start this series. Because there's like some foreshadowing, but imagine if you'd never been exposed to the series, you pick it up, you're going to be shocked and devastated, right? Because he seems like a main character, and so for him to die is, whoa. But because you've read TOG and Com, you already know that, and so it alters your reading experience in a very significant way. And then, as I said before, previously referenced above at the top of the episode, I feel like I wasn't emotionally attached because I already knew what the outcome was. Next, Tab provides a very important context for Celaena and Chaol's relationship in Com. When we get the firsthand account of her first romantic relationship with Sam and how it ended, it gives us so much more meaning to the trust and faith she puts in Chaol and trusting him with her heart and her body. And I think, it's true, because they do reference that a little bit, or not a little bit, a fair amount in her physical relationship with Sam. And so I think when you know what her relationship history is, you understand why it's such a huge deal that she makes the decision she makes when she enters into a pretty serious relationship with Chaol, what that meant for her character, okay? I also, tangentially related, it also gives really important context for her friendship with Nehemia. Knowing her experience with Ansel really demonstrates what a huge deal it is for her to forge a relationship with Nehemia and, more importantly, to trust her. Trust is everything. That's basically what all of Tab is, a story about Arobynn, arguably her most important relationship, and the trust they have being repeatedly violated. And so knowing that information and how the events of TOG Com plays out, it gives so much more meaning to the interactions that all of these characters have. In relation to this, it also helped me at least understand her very visceral reaction to Nehemia's death. When that happened, I was kind of like, okay, I get you're sad. It's horrible, but you're a little over the top here. Okay, you're a little dramatic. But it is a direct parallel with Sam's death. The situations are, in a way, very similar. She could have intervened to save Sam, but she didn't. Not by choice, but you know what I mean. And it cost him his life. And the same thing is true with Nehemia. Had she been given information, had she been at the castle, she could have intervened, or at least in her mind, had she had the opportunity, she could have made a difference, and she didn't. And so there's a lot of parallels between those two characters and their deaths. And I think that information is really important in how Celaena processes the aftermath of Nehemia's death. It also makes so much more sense why she feels so deeply betrayed by Chaol in regards to Nehemia's death, because it's a direct repeat of the past. I remember when that happened, I was like, Chaol did not do anything wrong. Should he have told her, up for debate? But it's not like he knew she was going to be assassinated and he was like, I'm not going to tell her on order of the king. All he did was not tell her about a secret threat on her life, which I'm sure she got threats on her life all the time. And he didn't tell her that the king was thinking about questioning her, which also, by the way, Nehemia knew and didn't tell anybody, but whatever, that's a whole other thing. But regardless, it makes a lot more sense why she is so angry, because betrayal is a repeat theme of her life. And she finally made the leap to trust someone after Sam, and they betrayed her, at least in her mind. I'm almost done. Okay. My next point is, I don't think it impacts TOG or Com in any meaningful way by reading Tab first, and I will briefly break it down by story to demonstrate this point. The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. There's one throwaway line in TOG about the time she freed 200 slaves from the Pirate Lord. Reading Tab first changes that line from a mysterious, I wonder what that's about, to, ooh, what a fun Easter egg, right? So it doesn't impact your experience with TOG. The Assassin and the Healer, not mentioned at all. Has absolutely no impact, to reading Tab first. It just doesn't alter your reading experience. The Assassin in the Desert, this one probably has the most or second most impact. There are a few mentions of the Red Desert and descriptions of how she moved like a snake in the Red Desert. When Dorian gives Chaol the Asterian stallion and makes the comment about how she stole a mare from the Lord of Xandria, that's one of the times that story is referenced. And again, it just makes it a fun Easter egg because you're like, oh, I know what she's talking about, right? It, again, doesn't change your reading experience. There's also the line in TOG where she mentions she had a friend once, a girl who would do anything to get what she wanted. Again, it turns it into an Easter egg. I mean, that one is a little bit more intriguing, and it's kind of cool that you don't know because you're like, oh, I wonder what happened. But not going to alter your experience. the assassin in the underworld, the only real connection to Tog and Calm is that Lysandra is very briefly mentioned when she goes to the party with Archer. And she's just like, oh, I had a long, violent history with Lysandra. Doesn't spoil anything. And then for the assassin in the Empire, it literally doesn't affect Tog and Calm at all. And it actually makes Tog more interesting when Celaena thinks about who betrayed her and why. Because you have context and information. So you're like, oh my God, Celaena, like, put it together, you know? So, as I said earlier also, it gives you more context for the heartbreaking stuff in Tog and Calm, specifically whenever Celaena references Sam and shares about Sam with Dorian or Chaol. And so all of those things, I think reading Tab doesn't impact your Tog or Calm experience. It actually enhances it. And then this is the last thing, I swear. Reading Tab now takes you out of the story timeline. Think about where Calm leaves off. This is a major earth-shattering bombshell, okay? She's opened a portal to another world. She's fucking Fae. She's Aelin Galathinius. She's going to Wendland where her fucking aunt lives. Like, where you leave off in Calm is so exciting. You're on the precipice of this incredible journey. And instead, we're like, oh, let's go read about pirates. You know what I mean? And they're not bad stories. But I think reading Tab first makes a better, more cohesive reading experience in terms of timeline. Because, don't get me wrong, I'll get over it when we start Heir of Fire. But I feel like it's a little jarring to jump from those two timelines and sort of ruins the flow of the story for me. Mm-hmm. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
You have a lot of very strong opinions. And
yes, I do.
You made some interesting points, probably more so about the character relationships. I had a different thought process. I think what I was thinking about when I was evaluating when to read it is different than what you were thinking about. There's a couple things that were similar.
Okay.
But I actually didn't mind reading it third.
Okay.
Although the one thing that I will full agree with you on is that it did take you out of the plot. Even now, thinking about Heir of Fire, I'm sitting here being like, what happened in Calm? I'm going to have to go refresh myself. Which part of that is because of just the pacing and just the overall amount of time. If we were reading these individually, we would have covered these books like way quicker and gotten
girl. We would have been done with the series by now on our second reread. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So that's part of it. But I agree that reading it now, after the story had really picked up from a plot perspective by the end of Calm, it did take you out of the experience of that. I really would have liked to just continue on with the plot now. With that being said, I think we had gotten enough information from Celaena's references to her past to be curious about what happened to her. So then when we actually finally read these stories, it was exciting to be like, aha, that was what she was talking about. And now XYZ behavior makes total sense for her. I understand why she was doing those things throughout Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight and had the reactions that she did. I feel like had we read the book first, it may have made reading Throne of Glass, especially, less exciting because we wouldn't have had some of that mystery to carry us along, I guess. But then again, I can also see how reading this book first may be better just because it follows chronologically. So you get all the background info about her from the get-go, and then it helps contextualize the behaviors that we see. And you may find yourself being less annoyed with some of the things and the reactions that she had in circumstances because you know what fueled that. I think the way that she reacted with Nehemia made a lot of sense, but it was misdirected at Chaol. I still stand by that. I don't think that Chaol was in the wrong with that. And I don't think that Chaol's betrayal of her was equivalent to what Ansel or Arobynn were doing. I do not
agreed
betrayals whatsoever. And so I don't feel that it was the same type of betrayal. At the end of the day, yes, it was a betrayal, but it was justified because Celaena wasn't being honest about everything either. So she can't hound one person for being all honesty, etc. Like, I need all the information immediately when she herself is not being forthcoming either. So some of that stuff I'm not going to get into too much, but
in regards to the betrayal, though, I think absolutely I agree with you. Ansel and Arobynn, not the same as, you know, Chaol, not comparable, but because of her past experience, it heightens her sensitivity to any perceived betrayal. And I think
Right.
that context helps you contextualize why her reaction to Kale is so dramatic. Because I was just like, girl, Celaena, you need to calm down. Okay.
Yeah. Just a little bit. Yes. I did wonder if reading tab first would have maybe felt a little disjointed, because you get more context about her current state and occupation. So then you understand, how and why she is an assassin. Speaking about like if you had read Throne of Glass, for example, first, right? You understand why she's an assassin, what her place in the plot is currently and for the rest of the series. So then when you go back and read the background, I think it makes it a little more compelling. Because, like you said, there's like maybe a couple things that you would need to know from Tab to fill in the gaps for Throne of Glass specifically, maybe. But the rest of the stories, they stand alone, right? They're just past experiences of Celaena's, and they don't currently play a large role in the rest of the plot of the series. They're very separate. And so I think reading Tab first would have perhaps felt a little boring because you don't understand Celaena's relevance to the series as a whole, I guess.
Okay.
But in reference to her relationship with Sam, I definitely agree that if we had read Tab first, I think I definitely would have felt much more emotionally damaged by his death. Because again, we didn't see it coming. We think this is the relationship for her. It's going to be great, lovely, and so then when he does die, you're like, oh, shit. I think it makes you really sad, right?
Yeah.
But since we did read it third, as we said before, it did make it hard to really invest in that relationship. And it just ultimately didn't impact you as much as it could have. So, if anything, I think reading it after Throne of Glass probably would have been better for me, because you're not so far into the plot to where you want to keep reading, right? You don't want to backtrack in the timeline too much to like cover these other things. But I think Throne of Glass is when she makes the bulk of her references to her past. And I think we had discussed how like a lot of Throne of Glass it was a little boring at times until the very end, because you had these tournaments that you're kind of like, why is she having these tournaments? It was just a little
love triangle. Blah.
Yeah, it was a little slow. And I think having some of those mystery references was good in that case, because then you could kind of have something to wonder about outside of other things. So then if you'd go back and read it afterwards, then you could really be like, oh, okay, that answers this reference, this reference, this reference. Now I have all my context. I also understand Celaena's larger role in the plot. Now I can continue on my way with all the information, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say, is read it after Throne of Glass, in my opinion.
Look at you out here wilding.
A plot person. Being I don't even know how to categorize. If what I said resonated with you, then read it after Throne of Glass, I guess.
Lorraine, you know what you are? You're the living embodiment of, those posters in a counselor's office with like a kitten hanging onto a tightrope, or, 3 ducks walking in a row and the other one's walking the other way, and it's like, dare to be different. That's you. You're the poster. You're dare to be different. You're like, no, don't read it before TOG and COM. Don't read it after COM. Read it after TOG. You got to be a trendsetter,
yes,
trailblazer. You got to be a trailblazer.
Yes. No, I think that is kind of like the perfect blend. Who the heck wants to read this after Air of Fire? You're way too deep at that point, in my opinion, to like track all of a sudden. Like, why? That seems completely bonkers to me. I would definitely not do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Ask me again after we finish Air of Fire, because having not read it, I can't, obviously say with any authority. But where I am mentally, that feels fucking insane to me.
That feels way too far down the line.
My impression, being a person who has social media, and again, as always, I avoid spoilers, but my general impression is Air of Fire, the series fucking takes off. And that's where a bunch of exciting shit happens. So I can't imagine going from like the most exciting, like boom, 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 things are happening, the world expands, and then being like, Rolf the Pirate Lord, you know?
So let's go jump back a couple years and
you
talk
Air of Fire
about
people, weirdos. The ones who read it after Air of Fire.
Yeah, y'all are something else.
Y'all are the real trailblazers.
Yeah. But anyways, that's all I would have to say about reading order.
Yes, I hear your points. Respectfully disagree. I think you're lovely and wrong.
If you resonate with what Addison said, then read it first. If you resonate with what I said, then read it after throwing a glass. And this is what it is.
If you like to be right, just do what Addison says. And if you like to be wrong, do what Lorraine says. I'm just kidding, sort of. I'm ultra competitive.
Addison was a debater. Yeah, and I just I'm not. So
yeah. You can tell I sparked my debate brain. I was like, oh my God, like you should have heard me. I told my husband, like, I'm gonna sit down and my notes. I was just typing like crazy, and he's like, what are you doing over there? Because normally when I do my notes, I go between my book and I'm highlighting and doing different things. And I was literally just typing like a psychopath.
Like clacking away. Yeah.
I know he was like, are you writing an angry email to a store manager? I'm like, no. I'm like, people need to read tab first, you know? You could tell I was just bursting to get that off my chest. I feel so relieved now. Now that I put it out there, I feel so relieved.
We'll let the people decide. Maybe we'll put up a little poll on Insta of like what your preferred reading order is.
Totally. Yeah.
We'll see. Totally. We'll see what the masses say.
The masses.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. So I think that officially concludes our pre-analysis thoughts about the book, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Finally ready to actually get to the story. And I promise I'll be quiet for a long time.
Okay. Well, here we go. So this story was structured a little bit different. You had a little prequel section titled After. You had chapters 1 through 12. And then you had another after section. And then a before section.
Beginning
section. So very quickly, in the after section, Celaena is being transported in a prison wagon. It's early autumn, and it's easy to guess this was the day that she was captured after being betrayed. She looks at freckles of light on the panels of the wagon walls and notes it looked like ash from a world burned into nothing, lying in ruins around her. She could taste the ash of that dead world on her chapped lips, settling on her leaden tongue. Now, I am assuming that she is referring to Terrasen and how it had been burned to the ground by the King of Arobynn. Is that what you thought she was talking about as well?
You know, I wondered about that because, as we know, the last book of the series is called Kingdom of Ash. So my ears always kind of perk up when I hear ash or something described like that. Honestly, I thought it was more of a metaphor for just my life has gone up in flames.
Okay.
Maybe it's a reference to both. Because in both after sections, when she's in the prison wagon on the way to Endovir, there's reference to Terrasen, like the breeze of pine and snow, the white stag. And so maybe they're all tied together in a way, right? And in her sort of delirious, broken state, she's conflating all of her trauma together. The loss of Terrasen, the loss of her family, the loss of Sam.
Yeah, I could see that. Maybe it's a little bit of foreshadowing as well. So it's meant to just be double-edged in a way.
Burn it to the ground, Celaena. Burn it to the ground.
Yeah. We'll see what she does in Air of Fire, but she attempts to block out a question she'd been trying to ignore, but eventually it wiggles its way to the forefront of her mind, and she wonders, had she brought this upon herself? Then, in the dark, it says she remembered. I will say this question felt a little bit like something else. Or actually, you know what? Never mind. I had this sudden thought where I was like, is this just her remembering how everything came to be and how she ended up in the prison wagon? And then we get the story of how she ended up in the prison wagon. And then we get the final thoughts. Or I was like, oh, maybe it's another piece about her past that we haven't learned about yet. But I guess in the context, it feels like it's about, I remembered how I ended up here. Let's tell the story.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say, I think it's a creative way to draw you in with a kind of mystery circumstance, like, whoa, how did we go from Underworld to now Celaena's in a wagon on the way to Endovir? Which, again, would be more interesting if we hadn't read TOG, if we just all of a sudden were in a wagon on the way to Endovir. But regardless, I think it's like a way to creatively introduce the short story. And then she remembered what happened, and here's what happened. So I think kind of what you said is correct.
Okay. And yeah, that just ends that small section. So moving on to chapter 1. So we go back in time to 11 days before she had been captured, referring to Celaena. Celaena had broken into the theater and was listening to the orchestra from a wooden walkway high above. She reflects on how this used to be her annual tradition with Arobynn, who now sat in his private box accompanied by Lysandra. Even a month later, he still seemed to be monopolizing her time. Gag. I hate that. Despite this, she still enjoyed the music of the symphony, but she reminds herself that she'd chosen to leave Arobynn and walk away from her life as Arobynn's protege, something she still didn't regret since Arobynn had beat her, lied to her, and humiliated her. As the music comes to its climax, Celaena remembers that this was worth it, now that she was free and Sam was free. Then she walks out the door, leaving the theater behind. By 11 p.m., Celaena arrives back to her apartment, which she now shares with Sam and had carefully furnished to her liking. She's about to eat a leftover berry tart when she spies a note from Sam stating, "I've gone out, don't wait up." Celaena, realizing where he had gone, crumples up the paper and swears viciously before heading back out. Celaena ends up heading to the Vaults, a grimy pleasure hall where the scum of the capital could always be found. Eventually, she makes it to the pit where Sam, shirtless and sweaty, was fighting against another man. She realizes that at this point, Sam was just putting on a show and could have easily ended the fight by now. The crowd roars and cheers as Sam finally knocks the man out with a roundhouse kick and a final punch to the face. Celaena briefly considers jumping into the ring herself to put on a show, knowing if they thought Sam was good, then she'd really give the crowd something to scream for. Sam spots her and she nods her head toward the exit to signify he was done for the night and she'd meet him on the street when he had collected his earnings. Also, a brief note about the vaults. This had been a place that was mentioned in Crown of Midnight when Celaena had gone to exact revenge on Nehemiah's behalf.
Oh,
That's where she had found grave. So if it sounded familiar, that is why. Celaena and Sam walk home, and it's clear Celaena is pissed. Eventually, Celaena says, "You promised you wouldn't go back there. People die in the vaults." Sam argues back to remind her that the people who die aren't trained assassins and that they needed whatever money they could get because they hadn't been able to get any contracts since leaving the Assassin's Keep. They argue more about money and Celaena's lifestyle choices, which we know our girl loves the finer things in life.
Oh my God. That was so funny when he called her out on that. I was like, "You ain't wrong, girl. You ain't wrong."
He got expensive taste.
I don't fault her for it, but
no, but it's a true statement. So eventually Sam suggests, "Then what if we leave Rifthold? What's keeping us here?" Which Celaena silently contemplates the absurdity of as they continue walking. They arrive back to the apartment, which is actually quite luxurious with its running water system and something Celaena truly treasures. Sam settles down to eat as Celaena once again remembers that everything costs money, but she responds to Sam and says, "If we were to leave Rifthold, then we need a little more money so we could have something to fall back on if we can't get work right away." She then says one more contract each. Then they could move. Sam suggests they go to hell with it and just leave, but Celaena worries about how they'd reestablish themselves, especially without Arobynn's support. They realize that if they want to leave Rifthold and their lives as assassins, then they'd have to get Arobynn's blessing and pay off the Assassin's Guild. Celaena and Sam had both been dispatched more than once to hunt down guild members who had gone rogue, refused to pay their dues, or broken some sacred guild rule. Celaena resolves they need to go see Arobynn tomorrow to strike a deal with him to let them leave the guild. She worries about leaving the city she'd grown to know so well, but Sam comes over to her and hugs her. He assures her, stating, "I just want to be with you," and then apologizes for going to the vaults. Celaena notes that he smells like her very expensive lavender soap, which you probably couldn't even tell the difference between, but replies, "If you go to the vaults again, I'll hop in and beat you unconscious myself."
This is such a relatable experience to me. Last year, no, maybe not last year, it was the year before. I don't know, semi-recently in my past, I tried Function of Beauty, which is where you order custom hair products. You do a little quiz and everything, and then they send you this specially formulated products. And you can pick your scent and everything. It was really nice. I really liked it. I did it for a long time, but then I had such a backlog of product that I paused it for a while. But regardless, my husband would use them. And I'd be like, fucking use my stuff because that's specifically formulated for my hair, okay? And I buy him like decent shampoo and conditioner, but that is so relatable. I was like, yes, I get it. Well, because, I mean, in fairness, he has very short hair and I have a ton of hair. So the amount of product he was using was infinitesimal, but I could still smell it on him. And I'm like, you're using my stuff.
Using my stuff, don't touch it. Yeah, exactly.
He's like, but it smells nice. I'm like, oh.
Then pick out your own.
Exactly. I did eventually order him his own custom products. So, it worked.
Oh, look at you. You're so nice.
I try.
Celaena turns around in his arms and she begins to complain about him using her soap, but he kisses her and she stops talking. But the question remains in her head. Would Arobynn Hamel let them leave? And that question alone really made me worry from the beginning of the story.
Yup. You should have known in that moment. Ain't gonna work out.
Wasn't gonna let you leave. Not without a price.
Everything has a price.
Everything has a price. That's freaking right. Moving on to chapter 2. The next day, Celaena and Sam enter the Assassin's Keep. Sam greets Wesley with a handshake, who says to Celaena, "You look more or less the same." Celaena notes that Wesley had never liked her or bothered to be nice, but she just responds, "And you still look like a jackass," before they head into Arobynn's study.
She's so fucking mean to Wesley, which
she really is.
Even though we don't get very much Wesley at all in this story, knowing his fate, which we'll talk about more as we progress, because we talked about it a little bit in the last episode as well, that I feel weirdly defensive of Wesley. And I'm like, how dare you be mean to him? Like,
he tried to warn you and you didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I guess it seems like maybe he was never rude to her, but never went out of his way to be nice either.
Yeah.
I guess, and she just took offense to that. I don't know. Anyways, Arobynn asks, "Do I even want to know what brings the two of you back home?" Home being a very intentional word choice. Celaena makes their proposal about leaving Rifthold and the guild, but Arobynn evades their questions, preferring instead to give non-answers and ask about where they were living now. Eventually, Arobynn says, "You are free to move away and do whatever you want." Sam, throughout all of this, has become increasingly more agitated, and Celaena jumps in and names a sum she'd be willing to give to leave the guild, stating, "That price is more than satisfactory for us to leave and set up our own business elsewhere." Arobynn counters with a sum that leaves Celaena stunned and suspicious that he must have somehow figured out how much she had left in her account, because his number would wipe her out entirely. Sam argues against such an outrageous price, but Celaena, realizing he wasn't going to budge, accepts the offer. She says, "I'll have the funds transferred to your account immediately, and once that's done, we're leaving, and I expect to never be bothered by you or the guild again. Understood?" Arobynn agrees, and it's clear he's rattled Celaena to her core.
Okay, I have one very small, dumb thing to say about this, but again, with the money, I started not obsessed with money, but why do they never actually say the sum of any amount of money? Why is he not 10,000 gold marks? And she's like, how about 7? And he's like, how about 20? Why is there this ambiguity? Why not give us the details? I don't know why. It just really freaking bothered me. I'm just curious, I guess. What does it cost to leave an Assassin's Guild? I don't know. It just really drove me nuts.
Yeah, I do want to know, because our only reference is 500,000 gold marks for Lysandra's bidding.
And that was how much she owed him for her debt, for him raising her.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Because
so I
she
would
had to pay him
imagine
back.
it's something similar.
No, it can't be that much. Maybe 50,000 gold marks or something.
I think Arobynn is factoring in what he loses by not having her available to take on the jobs, right?
Yeah,
so if you think
losses.
about, because she is she's his best assassin, probably made the guild a lot of money. So she was really just an asset. And so to lose her, he wants to capitalize, I'm sure, on backlogs of whatever was lost to the future by her leaving early.
Well, see, Lorraine, you're just proving my point. If Sarah J. Maas had put in the sums of money, we wouldn't have to be having this debate. I don't know why, but I just really wanted to know. But it's not important, obviously, but it's just curious.
Yeah, that is funny, though. Who knows? How much does Celaena's dress cost?
I don't know.
She loves to buy. I don't know.
Yeah, my conception of how money works in this universe is so distorted, because I'm a few coppers. And then I remember when they pay for the ales, she gives them a silver. And she's way overpaying for 2 beers. So I'm like, is silver like a $10 bill and the coppers are like $1? I mean, I don't know. Can make the math work.
Who knows?
We'll never fucking
Nobody
know.
knows. Yeah, we'll never know. Later on, Sam and Celaena argue about the terms she had settled on with Arobynn as they walk through the city. Sam says, "You paid for your debt and mine already. I'm not letting you give him another copper. We can find some way around paying this pardon fee." Celaena attempts to figure out what the underlying issue is, and Sam counters with, "I'm sick of playing his games. I'd just as soon cut his throat as pay that money." Celaena calls him a fool and challenges that if they don't pay off the guild to Arabynn's satisfaction, she'd always worry they'd find them again someday to demand the money. Sam is dissatisfied with this reasoning, asking, "Where do we draw the line?" Then walks away, stating he needed to clear his head and would hear out the apartment later. Celaena continues walking and worries about being responsible for Sam since she had drawn him into the Skullspate derailment and cost him the career he'd worked for his entire life. She has a thought where she thinks she'd hand over all her money to make sure that he could at least be free, which is very cute. Despite her crispy, arrogant exterior, Celaena has always been, I think, loyal to the people that she does really care about.
Oh, yeah.
So
Loyal
even
to a
if,
fault.
even if it ends up causing trouble for them later. She walks past the heavily guarded gates to the glass castle, remembering how much she hated Otterland's empire. We have a thought from her, and she thinks inside that building it had been decreed that magic was outlawed, and that labor camps like Calaculla and Endovia were to be established. Inside that building, the murderer who called himself king dwelled, the man she feared above all else. If the vaults were the heart of Rifthold's underworld, then the glass castle was the soul of Otterland's empire. As she stared, she feels as if her problems with Sam and Arobynn were inconsequential, like gnats buzzing before the gaping maw of a creature poised to devour the world. Then, a chill wind blew past, ripping strands of hair from her braid. And I feel like that is definitely an ode to her role in the Glass Castle later. Perhaps Celaena was already calling to her.
Oh, that's a
to
good
signify
catch.
the danger
Oh, wow.
that is the king and his power.
Yeah, that description definitely stood out to me. Obviously, we talked a lot about the physical description of the castle, the feeling it evokes when you see it, when you're in it. And in Review or Call in TOG, Celaena fucking refused to go in the glass castle unless she was quite literally forced. And I think that is indicative of a lot of things. It's a very foreboding place. It's a place of evil. And man, I hope we see that castle burn to the ground. I guess shatter. I don't know, can glass burn?
Maybe with some dragon fire.
Ooh. Oh God, please let there be dragons.
I hope so. Fingers crossed. She takes a little comfort in knowing that everyone whose kingdoms had been conquered feared the king as much as she did. But then she continues walking home. Around dinner, Sam finally returns and announces he found a client. He says they'll pay a lot and they want to keep it from reaching the Assassin's Guild's ears. There's even a contract in it for you. Celaena asks who the client is, but Sam doesn't know and that he could have been acting on behalf of someone else. Celaena asks more questions and we learn the job is to kill Iowyn Jane and his second in command, Rorik Farron, who are both crime lords. And obviously this is like immediate blaring red flags. You're like,
yep.
What?
Yes, my note for this is in all caps. I wrote, how convenient that hours after their convo with Arobynn and a random person wants to pay them an exorbitant amount of money to kill some of the toughest people to kill, and specifically said they don't want the guild involved. How do they not realize that's suspicious? And this is quite literally 2 or 3 hours after their conversation with Arobynn. And they don't stop and think, wow, we were just talking about how we need money because we're broke and this fell into our lap. And they're going to pay such an exorbitant amount. They would be set up for not life, but, for a long time. Like, come on, for crying out loud.
Ugh, the beginning of the end.
Truly. Jinx.
Celaena also agrees this is a bad idea, stating Jane is the biggest crime lord in Rifthold and that Farron is a psychopath and a sadist. Sam doesn't seem suspicious or scared of this, reminding her that they needed more money and that it's good that we're the best. Celaena protests again to say everyone who'd ever tried to take out Jane wound up dead. Ultimately, Sam says, we'll do this and we'll have enough money to tie up our loose ends in Rifthold and set ourselves up somewhere else on the continent. So, will you go after Jane and Farron with me? Celaena decides she needs some time to think about it and then apologizes for what she had said earlier to him. They kiss, and this leads to a lightly spicy scene in the bedroom, and Celaena notes he was hers. This magnificent, powerful creature was hers. Sam's hands roam her body as much as she wants to take it further with Sam. She tells him, not tonight. If I'm going to do this once, then I want to enjoy every step. Sam, being the world's best book boyfriend, replies, I could wait. We have all the time in the world. And the chapter ends. Which is really unfortunate because they do not, in fact, have all the time in the world.
I know. I wrote, it's like reverse foreshadowing. They definitely do not have all the time. They have about 3 days tops. It's so sad.
I hate Arobynn Hamel specifically for taking this away from them.
Do you hate it because you hate it for Sam and Celaena, or do you hate it because you wanted a little spice in the book?
I think two things can be true at once. But anyways, that ends chapter 2. Moving on to chapter 3. The next morning, Celaena wakes up and admires Sam. She allows herself to think about a future where perhaps they could leave behind the death and killing that had been their occupation for so long. Sam wakes up and Celaena realizes that for him, she could someday give up being Otterland's assassin, give up the notoriety and fortune. Then she agrees to take down Jane and Farron with him. She states a quick plan to take out Farron first and weaken the chain of command, then take out Jane in the chaos that follows. Later that morning, Celaena transfers money to Arobynn, and then they spend the rest of the day gathering intel on Io and Jane. They realize that despite everyone knowing where Jane lived, he was extremely well guarded. As they walk past, they happen to spot Farron leave the house and enter a black carriage. Celaena gives us readers a bit of info about Farron. Farron had been born and abandoned and then begun working for Jane as an orphan spy.
There's 2 words you never thought you'd put together.
Well, I was just laughing at the first part. Farron had been born abandoned. And then he became an orphan spy.
That sounds like an AI bot wrote that. It was like, write me a tragic story. Person born, become orphan spy.
They became alive. Then someone left them. Then they work in crime.
In case you guys can't tell, once again, it is very late when we are recording. Again, it's my fault. And it's only going to get goofier from here.
Anyways, okay. Being as vicious as he was, he quickly climbed the ranks until he was appointed Jane's second in command. Farron remained unchallenged and feared due to his taste for sadistic torture. The carriage departs, and as it passes them, she sees Farron looking out the window, staring right at her, and he also smiles at her, which again, just red flags all around.
Yes.
Let the spying mission on Donoval be a lesson to show that they are not as sneaky as they think they are. And Farron literally seems to know who she is.
Yes.
The fact that despite even the very opportunistic timing of this job, and now the fact that they hadn't decided this is getting a little suspicious, it baffles me.
Yeah. No, I read the same thing. That creepy, lingering smile feels like a sign that he recognizes her. And I feel like at bare minimum, it should give them pause and make them think, why is he giving me that knowing look, right? I get that he's creepy and weird, but they're trained to observe everything and read body language and all that shit. And I'm like, you didn't think that was a weird? Knowing smile? Yes, it's so frustrating. Yeah. So frustrating.
And then it only gets worse. Celaena states they'll likely need to take Farron out while he's on his way somewhere. And Sam says, I'll probably need 2 days to figure it out. This causes an argument between them where Celaena wants to work together for safety, and Sam wants to keep Celaena out of it for as long as possible, also to keep her safe. Celaena realizes that there was a part of Sam that needed to take the lead, so she agrees to let him take Farron out by himself. But she would get to dispatch Jane. Again, terrible fucking idea. They're always so overconfident. And I'm like,
I know.
Why?
I know. Yeah, I definitely agree. Stupid planning here. And it's just so amateurish for them to refuse to work together. And even when Celaena's like, let me do some aerial spotting for you, that's just good business, right? Things happen all the time. What if you were to, I don't know, trip and fall and hit your head in the middle of the road? Unpredictable things happen all the time. It just makes sense to have backup for someone to be watching. So at bare minimum, if I'm like, hey, I get captured, you can run to the Assassin's Guild and go get an army of assassins to come rescue me, right? Shit happens all the time. People get compromised, injured, whatever. And it's so frustrating that he's like, oh, I'm a man. I have to do this myself. You know, this is my job. It just, his logic doesn't make any sense. His reasoning is stupid. Celaena relenting to him is fucking stupid. It is all so stupid. I mean, like, in a way, I'm like, agree for being a dumbass. Like, this wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have been so freaking haughty and stupid. Teenage boys. God. You feel like really worked up about this.
Yeah, you're quite heated.
I know. I don't know if my heart can take it, but I hope the rest of the series is not this intense, because I may actually have a stroke on this podcast.
I'm sure there are many more highly excitable things to come.
Don't say that.
No, girl, I mean, you already know. Yeah, there's no denying it.
I know. Oh God. Okay. Continue so my blood pressure can decrease. I find your voice very soothing.
Your voice soothes.
Not that voice. I don't like that one. I find your voice very soothing.
Later on, Celaena heads to dance class with Madame Florine. Sarah J. Maas must love dance, because I swear in every series, there's been at least one character who loves to dance. But
for real.
I love it, and it's cute, so
yeah,
I'll take it. After the lesson, she once again wonders if she'd ever find another place like Rifthold, where she'd have a dance instructor she loved, a wonderful library, a bookshop, and all the other shops for clothes and jewelry she loves so much. She makes it to the apartment and ultimately decides she could leave Rifthold. For Sam, she could leave. She opens the door and finds Arobynn fucking Hamel sitting on her couch, who greets her with a "Hello, darling."
Hello, darling. I always picture him as being British. I don't know why. Or not picture him, but I mean, I guess picture the way I hear him in my mind is he's British.
I don't like that he used the word darling, because it reminds me of Rhysand, and Arobynn is not Rhysand.
Oh, that's right. Hello, Farah, darling. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah. I think it's meant to imply this
not the same
possessive nature over Celaena, right? Like that he
That's true.
Can use a term of endearment when speaking to her. You said, still don't like it.
That ends chapter 3. Moving on to chapter 4. Celaena figures Arobynn had gotten her address from the servants who'd helped her move, but it still freaks her out nonetheless. Arobynn asks why they decided to take the job to take down Jane and Farron, emphasizing that even if you wouldn't take on Jane, quote, Jane is the undisputed crime lord in Rifthold for a reason. And Farron is the second for a damn good reason, too. You might be excellent, but you're not invincible. Celaena challenges that perhaps he's just worried she'll surpass him, but Arobynn really plays the role well of making it seem like he's concerned for her safety. Celaena ultimately tells him to get out. Arobynn then questions if she really trusts Sam and if she's told him the truth about where she came from. Celaena doesn't answer and instead just says, go. Arobynn chooses this moment to emotionally manipulate Celaena by stating he loves her and that I do the things I do because I'm afraid and because I don't know how to express what I feel, and then begs her to stay in Rifthold with him with the words, don't go. This hit Celaena hard as she remembered the night she and Sam had been beaten and how Ansel had begged not to be killed in the desert. Celaena realizes this was all just a tactic for him to bind her again, and now she had Sam, who told her he loved her without expecting anything in return. She tells Arobynn to get out again, and he does.
Okay, I have a thought about this and I have a question for you. So the first is, I do like Celena's introspection here, where she realizes that Sam has always given those words freely and without expectation. Because actually, as I think about it, I don't know if Celaena ever tells Sam that she loves him. I don't think that she does.
I thought she did later, but maybe I'm misremembering.
I don't know. I don't think she does. But I guess secondarily is that she realizes that Arobynn chooses this moment and weaponizes those words
Mm-hmm.
to manipulate her. So I'm proud of her for having that level of, awareness. But I do have a question for you in regards to this exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that Arobynn is being genuine in his emotional vulnerability?
I get the sense that there is a little bit of that, but again, I think it's too laced with control to be considered love. You know what I mean? It's always a strings attached situation, right? It's conditional. And
Right.
so he may think he feels that way, but
Mm-hmm.
it's because he wants something from her. Like he
Yeah.
needs her to be involved so that she can be an assassin. He needs her so that he can kind of control her and manipulate her in a lot of ways. Maybe in his mind, he thinks that that's what love is, but obviously from an outside perspective, you're like, nah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that ain't it, bro.
Okay. I think that's a fair assessment because I actually kind of think he is, especially given his response to Farron at the end of the story where he's like, I don't like to share my belongings. So when he says he's hurt that she picked Sam, I think he's genuine in that. I think the caveat that you add to that is really important there is that love and the capacity of which he's able to, and that love is in the form of control and manipulation, wanting the power dynamic of their relationship to stay the same. And so I think
Yes.
your caveat to that thought is correct.
I mean,
Curious.
even if he really loved her, why call her a belonging?
Well, yes, absolutely.
He treats her as an asset, and that is all.
Mhm.
He does not
Yeah.
treat her really as a true human being. I did have to wonder, though, what was he really trying to do? Because obviously he had set up this whole thing with Farron. So why even warn them if he got the outcome he wanted?
That's a good question. I actually feel this may be a moment of conscience for Arobynn, and that this is his way of maybe trying to avoid going through with the plan. It's sort of a last inflection point. Like, let me reach out to Celaena one more time. If she agrees to come back to the Assassin's Keep and everything, he can stop the plan from being set forth in motion, right? Because obviously he chooses Celaena over Sam, but I imagine he does care for Sam in some warped way. He is his second best assassin. He had a romantic-ish physical relationship with his mother. He's known Sam since he was a child. And so this may have been just a way for him to, like, let me try one last time to reach out and try to avoid what's going on. I think Arobynn uses violence as a tool for a means to an end, but I don't think he actually is happy that Samara is dead or has enjoyed that. Not in the way that Farron is, right? Farron is a sadist. He delights in other people's pain and misery, whereas I think Arabynn's like, well, this is what had to be done to get what I needed, which are two very different mindsets.
I kind of had a similar feeling as well. Although I think his goal to me feels mostly about Celaena. I really don't think he cares that much about Sam because he didn't try to stop Sam, and Sam was the one who was approached for this deal in the first place. So I kind of feel like maybe in his eyes, he's trying to get Celaena back and potentially eliminating Sam in the process to eliminate quote unquote competition. Perhaps. I don't know.
Well, he does go talk to Sam, though. Not,
Oh,
he
he
doesn't
did?
like beg him
Oh,
to
that's
stay,
right.
but yeah, remember, because he tries to drive a wedge between the two of them. And Sam
Oh, okay,
mentions
that's
that.
right.
I don't think his motivations are like in the sense of, let me try and get you back. But maybe there is an element of that. He's looking for a way to drive a wedge between the two of them so he doesn't have to go forth with the plan.
Hmm.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, if nothing else, this was just foreshadowing that Arobynn definitely was involved. So later on, Sam and Celaena meet for dinner at a tavern called the Black Signet. Celaena thinks about how normal and
Signet.
nonviolent the Signet.
Do you know what a signet is? Don't kill me. The look at your face. You want to kill me. Don't kill me. It's a baby
I'm thinking about this. It's a what?
a baby swan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I only know that. Just fun little side story about Addison is there are these two children's books called Daddy Hugs and Mommy Kisses. And the book is like, Daddy Frog gives his froglet with like a kiss on the eye. And then it's like a giraffe gives his calf a kiss on the neck or whatever. And then there's always a part where it's like Mommy Swan kisses her signet, like on the dark side. I can't remember what the phrase is, but I know every time I read that book, my husband gets to the word signet and he freezes and he looks at me and I'm like, the word signet, it's signet. And so I just was very recognizable to me because I'm like, oh my God, I know that word. It's the dumbest thing ever.
Was this read out loud to you? How did you?
No, it's a very specific niche thing related to having children that I know the word signet.
See, I've heard it pronounced signet, so that's why I pronounced it that way. I didn't know for sure, though. I guess it's signet.
Oh, now I'm questioning my sanity. What if I said it wrong? Uh-oh.
I don't know. Who cares? Okay. Celaena thinks about how normal and nonviolent the tavern was, and perhaps this was why they chose to go there for dinner most nights. They get back to the apartment later, and Sam asks if something had happened, given how quiet she'd been. Celaena instead asks, "Tell me your deepest secret." Sam responds with literally the sweetest possible thing and says, "The only secret I've borne my entire life is that I love you," with eyes so full of light it almost stops Celaena's heart. Sam, in turn, asks her about her secret, and Celaena reveals, "Deep down, I'm a coward, and I'm scared all the time, always." As if Sam literally couldn't get any more endearing to us, Sam gives her a tip stating, "Whenever I'm scared out of my wits, I tell myself, my name is Sam Cortland, I will not be afraid." Celaena is surprised by this and asks if it really works, but ultimately agrees that she likes it. And as we know, this becomes something Celaena continuously says throughout TOG and Calm. And it really gives it a whole new meaning now that we know it's from Sam.
So when she says deep down, I'm a coward, I'm always afraid, what do you think she means here? Like, what is she afraid of?
I think she's afraid of her identity and who she is.
Okay. That's pretty much what I wrote too. Being Aelin, the heir to the throne of Terrasen, and scared to face her destiny and the king, which we have talked about so much, especially in Calm too. But I was just curious if you had any other thoughts based on, what we've read in Tab so far.
I really don't know what else it would be because her own fate and her own identity is the one thing she's continuously avoided for
forever, her entire life. Yeah.
So
no kidding. Fair enough.
Yeah. Anyways, that ends chapter 4. Moving on to chapter 5. Celaena and Sam are up trailing Farron before dawn, who seemed to be quite busy with his personal errands and Jane's business. Celaena notes he always took the same black carriage everywhere and believes this is just proof of his arrogance since it made him an easy target. But this obviously is likely intentional since we learn later that Farron was in on it the whole freaking time. By late afternoon, they watched Farron enter down to the vaults, which are owned by Jane. They decide to go into the vaults as well, despite the risk, with Celaena noting it would be interesting to get a sense of what he was really like before Sam ended his life tomorrow night. They watch Farron speak with a man named Helmson, the master of ceremonies for fights. Celaena takes note of the shackled slaves scraping blood off the walls of the fighting pits, and the prostitutes laying in tangled heaps on cots in the back chambers. Celaena notes how badly she wanted to burn the place down, and that perhaps he'd do just that after they take out Jane and Farron as one final bit of glory and retribution from Celaena Sardathian. They pay for some ales and sit down to continue watching Farron. Celaena takes note of a locked wooden chest, likely full of the earnings from the night before. Farron goes over to start inspecting prostitutes, making comments on them to Helmson. Then a shackled man is brought out to him. The man turns out to be a fighter in the vault who is severely indebted to Jane. Farron nods to sentries who drag the man through a door and down the steps, with Farron following after them to inflict whatever form of, quote, justice Jane would expect. Within a few minutes, they hear a piercing shriek from the man, and Celaena tells a snarling and angry Sam it's time to leave. Sam vows he'll pay his debt for all of this as they leave the vaults. They end up stopping at a park where Celaena and Sam discuss how, despite being assassins, they were not the same as Farron. Could not be. Celaena reflects on how Arobynn had made them feel so enraged and justified by using truly despicable people to teach them how to torture and kill targets. But she tells Sam, we still had a line. We stayed on the other side of it. Lines don't exist for someone like Farron. Later on, they are back at the apartment after spending an additional 2 hours stalking Farron and Jane. After discussing the details, they decided Sam would dispatch Farron after he left the house, and Sam would wear his specially made suit with the spider silk patch over the heart. Celaena sharpens extra blades for Sam to use and asks again why she can't go with him. Sam reveals he had already secured them passage on a ship to the southern continent, leaving in 5 days, and she would need to help pack their stuff up. Celaena is immediately angered by this, stating, "That wasn't what we discussed. We decided to move to another city on this continent. And what if there's another Assassin's Guild on the southern continent?" Sam simply says they can join that guild, but Celaena is not having any part of this plan. They continue arguing, and Sam asks if her concern was really about the new continent or if it was secretly about Arobynn, revealing that he knew Arobynn had come to visit the apartment the previous day. Sam goes on to say Arobynn had approached him and told him to ask her about what really happened before he found her on the riverbank when they were children. But Sam had resisted taking the bait and told him he didn't care. That convo had prompted him to buy them passage to another continent because he knew Arobynn would never leave them alone. Celaena is frightened by this information, but Sam says, "When you're good and ready to tell me the truth, you'll do it. But until then, it's not my business. And it's not Arabynn's business. It's not anyone's business but your own." Celaena is clearly relieved to hear this and tries using Sam's trick by stating, "My name is Celaena Sardathian, and I will not be afraid." She looks at Sam, whose face was, quote, "a mixture of pride and wonder and such open affection that she could see that far off land where they'd find a home, see that future that awaited them, and that glimmer of hope that promised happiness she'd never considered or dared yearn for." Then she hugs Sam close as he says, "I love you."
Okay, so I have to ask you, whose side are you on in this fight between Sam and Celaena in regards to moving to the southern continent, and he accuses her of it not wanting to leave Arobynn? What are your thoughts on this? Like, who's right, who's wrong?
I actually think Sam is probably accurate in his reading of her. I think he can sense that she has a strong connection still to Rifthold and obviously Arobynn, which after everything that we've learned about what he has done to her and how he treats her and everything, it makes sense why she would feel so attached to him. It's not easy to just let go of somebody like that. You know, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's like a very up and down situation considering how manipulative and tangled up that entire relationship was. But with that being said, I don't know what the best way to approach it is. Because again, I think he's right in assessing her hesitation, but perhaps the way I think making decisions without her also pissed her off, right? Like buying the ship passage and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and not informing of her and then just deciding that's what we're going to go do without consulting her. I don't know.
Yeah,
What did you think?
I think I'm going to have to respectfully disagree for the most part. I do think that Sam does hit the nail on the head that part of her hesitation has to do with her connection to Arobynn. But I feel like Celaena's concerns are not unreasonable. And the way I think about it is in the perspective of myself. If my husband was like, "Honey, we're moving to North Carolina," or whatever, I would be like, maybe upset, whatever, have hesitation. But that's in the same country, right? Culturally, there's similarities. I understand things are very similar here to where I live to probably there. Obviously, there's going to be some differences, but they're relatable. But then imagine a world with no technology, no internet, no phones, only what you can read in books, which you may have limited access to. Actually, my husband was like, "Honey, we're moving to Australia. I know nothing. It's very far away. I know nothing about the culture, the people, the landscape, plants, animals, foods, music." And that would be really jarring and really scary and also not what they agreed on. And so honestly, I am actually on Celaena's side in this, that I think everything she's saying is accurate. 90% of it really is. That's not what they discuss. That's a huge departure, a huge change. And then that 10% is obviously, there's a connection to Arobynn, which I do agree with Sam on that. But I'm team Celaena on this. I got to be honest.
I think my reasoning for agreeing with Sam is probably also knowing that he is trying to do whatever he can to get them as far away from the threat, which is Arobynn and the Assassin's Guild. And they already know his reach expands all across the current continent of Aurelia, and
Yeah,
he's going to find them no matter what. And so I think in his
fair enough.
brain, he thinks that the only way to really escape is to go to an entirely different place, which is reasonable. But again, I would agree that, I mean, you can't just make decisions like that without consulting her. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Anyways, that rounds out chapter 5. Moving on to chapter 6. The next evening by 9 o'clock, Celaena is making little progress on the packing front and begins to worry about Sam. She wonders if perhaps he needed to wait longer for Farron to leave or had already done the job and was lying low just in case. But ultimately, she decides she wouldn't check on Sam. He'd wanted to do this on his own and he could be anywhere now. Then she starts packing her books because there was no way in hell she was going to move without all of her books. By 11 o'clock, Sam still wasn't back, so she heads out to patrol for him. The slums were mostly silent, but she keeps an eye out for any snippet of conversation that could indicate Farron was dead, but she hears nothing useful. She circles around all the places Sam had planned to be, but even all the guards surrounding Jane's house looked positively bored. She makes up a few more justifications for why Sam wasn't back yet and then heads back home. And I was like, girl, why are you ignoring your instincts?
Yes. Okay. So, when briefly she thinks she listened for any mentions of witty whisperings about anything that went down. Okay. But she hears nothing. And so I'm like, this is a huge red flag. If Rorik Farron was killed, that would be huge news and everyone would freaking be talking about it. There's no way she could walk down the streets of Rifthold without hearing that. She would have known immediately. So the fact that she didn't hear a damn word, not even a whisper of, oh, there was an attempt made on Rorik Farron's life, should have been a huge fucking red flag for her. She should have been like, something is wrong because everybody should be talking about this. So I was just like, what are you doing? And you go back to the apartment. Oh man, this next few sequence of chapters with her going back and forth and then falling asleep. This is the one thing, if I really think about it, gets me actually upset is thinking about him down in whatever, some dark chamber being tortured and this whole time wondering, is Celaena going to come? Because they even said that they had agreed he'd be back by midnight. And if he wasn't back by midnight, that's when she'd go and look for him. And it's like, he didn't.
And she doesn't do that.
And instead she's like, oh, he's probably hiding somewhere else. I'm sure everything's okay. It doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense.
I wonder if she felt like if she went to look for him, it would be a betrayal. And because betrayal is such a huge thing for her, she was like, I'm not going to do that. But I'm like, this is a life or death situation. What are you doing?
Well, it costs her everything. So lesson learned.
Moving on to chapter 7. Upon arriving home, Celaena paces around just in case until 2 o'clock in the morning, then ultimately falls asleep on the couch. She wakes up briefly at 4 a.m. and thinks perhaps Sam had hidden out at the Assassin's Keep, and then falls back asleep again. She wakes up again at some point in the morning and goes out to check the city, but by this point, she was fully aware that something was wrong, which, like, no shit.
She scours the slums. Yeah, exactly. No shit.
She scours the slums and neighborhoods searching for anything, any sign of Farron, or she didn't let herself finish that thought. But after finding nothing, she again attempts to calm down by telling herself he would be waiting at home. He'd be home. By the time she gets back to the apartment, it was noon. She slumps up the steps and finds her door unlocked and slightly ajar. She gets a brief start of excitement mixed with rage at the thought of Sam making her wait so long. But as she bursts through the door, she finds Arobynn Hamel sitting on her couch yet again. Arobynn whispers, I'm sorry. And the dreaded silence strikes.
I have nothing to add. I just a complete annoyance at her ineptitude. I know it's not her fault, but I'm like, she had so many options. She could have looked for him. She could have went to Arobynn and said she was worried. She could have done so many things. And instead, she went back to her house and fell asleep. Well, I'm kind of mad at Celaena. The more we talk about it, the more angrier I am.
I'm telling you, she does all these things sometimes. And I'm like, girl, I don't understand. But obviously, by this point, it's very fucking obvious that Arobynn had done something. This bitch was way too heavy in the business to be uninvolved. No way you're going to keep showing up like this and not have had anything to do with it. So, moving on to chapter 8. Arobynn informs her the crime lords left Sam's body at the keep to send a message, believing he still lived there. In a blind rage, Celaena hurls a clock against the dining room wall and thinks there was no end to the silence. There would never be an end, only this beginning. Then says to Arobynn, I want to see the body. He tries to dissuade her, but unable to calm herself, she starts walking, and before we know it, she's back out on the streets of the city once again. She heads to the keep, Arobynn trailing behind her, with the sounds of the city sometimes invading the deafening silence she felt, and tells herself it had been a mistake. And when she figured out where they were keeping him, she'd stop at nothing to find him, and then she'd slaughter them all. Arobynn leads her down to the mortuary in the dungeon of the keep, and he attempts one more time to stop her from looking, but she ignores him. She walks to where Sam's body now lay, burns and deep slices peppered across, and the world sways beneath her feet. She is completely disillusioned by the reality that was now sinking in, and after vomiting on the floor, she climbs to the wooden table to lay next to Sam, holding him close. She stays next to Sam and smells a strange musky scent all over him, but she promises she wouldn't leave him. Eventually, Arobynn leaves the room, and that ends chapter 8.
Very sad. Very good descriptive language here. You really feel awful. And the description of what they did to his body, the thing that really got me upset, they took his eyes out. And like the thought of them doing that while he's alive. Oh my God. Okay. It really freaks me out. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Horrible on so many levels.
It's disgusting knowing that they paralyzed him and then did that stuff too.
Oh God.
He couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't even react to the pain.
Yes.
Like, ugh. I don't like it at all. Gross.
I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy.
Yeah. This is such a depressing story, honestly.
I know. I'm getting sadder by the minute.
Chapter 9. Celaena awakens at the Assassin's Keep to the excruciating reality that Sam was gone. She gets the distinct sense that something was missing in the world, something vital. I really felt that this opening set of paragraphs felt very reminiscent of how Celaena reacted when Nehemia died in Crown of Midnight. Personally, I felt like it gives that death a lot more weight, knowing she reacted similarly to when Sam died. I think it's easy to visualize and feel that pain when you're talking about a romantic relationship, but I don't think we often discuss this in terms of, other relationships that we have. Other relationships, friendships that we have in our lives. But in both cases, she becomes just totally immobilized from the pain she feels from the loss, and I really feel for her.
Yeah.
Plus, this is like a double whammy for her because, not only did Sam die, but he also died at the hands of someone she had been groomed her entire life to trust. So
that's so funny because I had the exact same thing. It's specifically the descriptions of where she lays in bed and she watches as the sun moves in the sky and it changes the shadows in the room, and that it's almost to a T exactly how she responds to Nehemia's death. She just lays in bed for days and days, which I'm not faulting her for. I understand that's a reasonable reaction, but I agree with you wholeheartedly that there's a lot of parallels there, and I think it gives context to that relationship between a friend and a friend. That's how I would feel if anything ever happened to you.
Oh, I know. Same.
Be careful, okay? I love you.
Girl, you ain't ever gonna catch me out on the streets past 10. Okay.
Just podcasting past 10.
Yeah, exactly. Too many dangers out in the world.
We haven't made any obscure social media references, so I don't know if you remember this audio where I remember seeing the very first reel. It was like this really cute, fluffy dog. And the voiceover was like, I'm for the sheets, not the streets, okay? I want to be in the bed. And that's how I felt. I'm for the sheets, not the streets, okay?
Same.
I want to be in the bed on my phone with my laptop and my books and snacks and drinks.
And loaded with snacks. Yes, exactly. Celaena spends the rest of the day in and out of what seems to be a trance. She is still trying to come to terms with the fact that she would never see Sam and his beautiful gold brown eyes again. She'd never get to see that half smile, never get to hear his laugh, never get to hear him say her name like it meant something special. So she continues letting the world pass by without her. A while later, it's now nighttime, and she wakes up to voices outside her door. Arobynn and some other assassins are discussing a plan to retaliate against Farron and Jane. Arobynn says, "We strike tonight. Farron lives at the house, and if we time it right, we'll kill them both while they're in their beds." Then continues to say they can enter through a second-story window, which can be accessed by jumping from the roof across. He also says they'll go at midnight and that everyone is to keep it totally secret. My first two thoughts, even on the first read, were A, don't trust Arobynn. This is suspicious. And B, it reminds me of when Celaena rescued Chaol from the rebels because she had leaped through a window from the rooftop as well. She's always leaping through windows and like doing stuff like that.
Well, dramatic entrances were practically her art form.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this raised immediate red flags for me. Why would Arobynn and his assassins be discussing their plan loudly and in detail outside of her room? That is suspicious as fuck. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Hello. It's not a carnival, baby. That's a red flag. Okay? Like, Jesus Christ, Celaena. I just can't.
I know. I almost feel like maybe we should stop touching on it so we don't get so angry every time.
No. It is our duty to our listeners to point out all the stupidity of this story, okay? In fairness, we're almost at the end, so I think that may actually be the last one. There may be like one more after this, but...
Yeah. But again, it's just too opportunistic once again. Like, that he's going to give all these details right where she can hear them.
Yes.
God.
Exactly. Because like, they have to be like pretty close to right outside her door.
Yeah.
It just so happens they're in the hallway discussing that.
Who has a conversation like that directly outside of your door?
Thank you. Okay. With my kids, like at bedtime, they always like to do one hide and seek. And so they make me go outside and I'm like, where are my kids? I almost said that. So I'm not going to say that. But I'm like, where could my two little kids be? And you just hear them giggling, you know? And it's like, I'm doing that intentionally for that. But that's what it feels like. It's like, we will retaliate this evening. This is horrible. You know, like it just seems so obvious.
You can jump through the second story window and they'll be right there. Oh my gosh, I know.
I hope I don't leave this map out for anyone to see with the exact specifications on the height and distance you would need to cross to get into this heavily guarded and fortified home. Like, this is so dumb.
Long sigh.
Heavy sigh.
Heavy sigh, yeah. Celaena notes that the door clicks to indicate she'd been locked in the room, and she basically wonders why Arobynn would do that. Despite her brain fog and the danger, she decided she wasn't letting anyone else exact revenge for her. She quickly finds some spare boots and extra daggers she'd hidden under the floorboards years ago and prepares herself to go kick some ass. She opens up the window and eases her way down, thinking to herself, good, this was her kill, her revenge to take, no one else's. So obviously you know that she is riled up, but the sequence did remind me of how Chaol back in TOG had told Dorian when they were watching her train that anger had always been her weakness.
Oh,
and you see that unfolding now because she is just so angry and hell-bent on getting revenge that she doesn't stop to think about the weird things she'd already noticed about Arobynn and how he'd also just locked her into her room.
Yes, that is such a great call out. Yeah, it makes me think of in the duel with Cain in TOG too, like he kept saying all those things about her parents and her past because he knew it would rile her so that she wouldn't be able to focus. And of course she was poisoned and stuff too, but yeah, that's a really good call out.
She manages to make it out the window undetected and makes it to the stables. And this is when Wesley surprises her from the shadows, demanding, where in the hell do you think you're going? Celaena angrily tells him to get out of her way and that she wasn't going to stay locked up. But interestingly, Wesley says, I'm not talking about Arobynn. Use your head and think, Celaena. Obviously, by this point, it's full alert as the reader. We know Wesley had warned her from her memories of the night in Calm. When you combine that with all the context that we've learned about Arobynn, it just makes it so damn obvious that Arobynn was involved with betraying her. Obviously, Celaena doesn't quite piece all of this together, but we, as the reader, have collected all the background info, and it's so frustrating to now sit here and just watch her do all this stuff.
So this isn't a bad place for the no. I don't really know if there's a right place for it, but as I kind of said earlier, I feel weirdly angry about Wesley's death and how it all plays out for him because you kind of get this impression that he's kind of a jerk, but he tries to warn Celaena. And there's even a description like he had sorrow and grief in his eyes. So I actually went back to Calm, to the scene where she's talking to Chaol about what happened with Rourke Farren. So I'm not going to read it because it's like a little bit lengthy, but I do want to tie it in here because it obviously sums up Rourke Farren's fate, but also it kind of gives us a little more context for Arobynn's reaction afterwards. So Chaol and Celaena in the beginning of Calm, they're discussing just whatever random stuff. And she asks him, do you know who Rourke Farren is? And of course, he's like, yes, I do. But Farren is dead. And this comes as a shock to Celaena. And so through a little timeline, my understanding is this happened about 3 months after Celaena goes into Endovier, because Chaol says 9 months ago, he and his 3 top men were all found murdered by Wesley, who we know as Arobynn Hamel's personal guard. They go on to kind of discuss it. And she says, well, what happened to Wesley? Did Farren's men catch him? And Chaol says, no, we found Wesley a day later, courtesy of Arobynn Hamel. And then he goes on to say, Wesley's body was impaled on the iron fence outside of Rourke's house. There was enough blood to suggest that Wesley was alive when they did it. They never confessed, but we got the sense that the servants in the household had been instructed to let him stay there until he died. We thought it was an attempt to balance the blood feud so that when the next crime lord ascended, they wouldn't view Arobynn and his assassins as enemies. And Celaena is just absolutely horrified by this. She didn't know any of this because she was in Endovier. So then Chaol, after a few moments of silence, Chaol goes on to say, we never learned why Wesley went after Rourke Farren, though. Wesley was just a personal bodyguard. What did he have against Farren? And then this is when Celaena remembers, and she actually says it was an act of revenge, but she doesn't give any more context. And then there's a brief description where she's like, she can still see Farren crouched in front of her, his hands roaming over her paralyzed body. And she gives him like a little bit of context, but she doesn't really tell him the rest. But I thought that was especially interesting and horrible that it seems like Wesley went rogue and avenged Sam and Celaena. And as honestly, in a way, to kind of get back at Arobynn. And as punishment, Arobynn impales him on a fence and instructs the servants and everyone to let him die, like bleed out on a spike. And that is just so horrible. And for some reason, I'm just like completely outraged by this. And I want justice for Wesley. Well, we don't really know Wesley. He's not really an important character. But when you add that follow up to the end of this story, it's so heartbreaking and frustrating and sickening that Arobynn did that.
Yep.
Pretty much. You can't be like, I disagree, right? What are you going to say? Like, no, you're like, yep, pretty much. Fucking sucks. But I just thought that was a nice tie-in to Calm. And honestly, I had completely forgotten about that until you mentioned it in the last Tab episode. So then as we were reading this and then Wesley became a more prominent part of this chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, let me follow up on that.
Yeah. Arobynn, again, can go rot in a fucking hole. Actually, well, Celaena needs to almost kill him and then go put him into a hole to just rot away that he can't escape out of, and then he'll just die a slow death.
I say send him to Endovier.
Oh, yeah.
See how he does.
Actually, yeah. That's a good point too. But you also don't want to risk him ever escaping and getting out.
No, you're right.
Because he seems like the slimy type who would, find his way out of some place like that. So anyways, Celaena is in no mood to think or listen, and rather than heeding Wesley's warning when he says, don't you understand? It's all just she decides to knock him out with a blow to the head, which obviously seals her fate for the next year. After this, she books it through the city in its alleys as she sprints toward Jane's house. She makes it to the rooftop across from the window Arobynn had mentioned, and to her credit, she does pause and think, was it arrogance or stupidity that kept Jane from having guards on the nearby roof? Even the guards in the street didn't look up at her. Who's the arrogant and stupid one in this scenario?
Riddle me that.
Rather than finally think about everything that had occurred, and the oddities she noticed, she proceeds with her plan to kill Jane and Farren. Celaena backs up 50 feet, sprints, and takes an all-or-nothing leap toward the window. Chapter 10. She barrels through said window, straight into a meeting. She quickly notes the people.
What a shock! Whoa!
What a thought. She hadn't realized the light was on due to the thick windows, but decides it doesn't matter because she was taking all of these mofos out. JK. Obviously, that's not what happened. She takes out several people, including Jane, whom she had stabbed in the neck, and it's important to note that this was all too easy and that Farron had remained seated and smiling at her the whole time. Eventually, guards with masks come into the room, and then smoke starts pouring into the room, the smell of which she immediately recognizes as the strange, musky smell she remembered on Sam's corpse. The world jolts to the side as Celaena feels the effects of the smoke. She gets punched several times, and then she goes unconscious. And she realizes that they had been waiting for her. The invitingly open window, the smoke, and the mask were all part of a plan, and she had fallen right into it. She regains reconsciousness a bit later to guards removing her weapons, and Celaena realizes that she is paralyzed. All facts also lead her to the conclusion that she had been betrayed.
What? Dun, dun,
Surprise!
dun. Yeah, what a fucking shock.
Though she can't accept that it would have been Arobynn at this point. Farron begins talking to her, stating, "I'm disappointed. You walked right into our little trap. You didn't even stop to think twice about it, did you? Never underestimate the power of love. Or is it revenge?" And honestly, I haven't once stopped thinking about Kale's observation from the rest of this chapter.
I gotta say, I have absolutely nothing in common with Rorik Farron, except for I'm a little disappointed that you didn't figure it out. That's the only thing we agree on.
But he literally gives a little bit of a clue there when he says, never underestimate the power of love or revenge. Because I feel like that's kind of a nod to Arobynn. But anyways.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Farron goes on to reveal he'd used Gloriella to paralyze her and then begins to taunt her about Sam's capture and torture. Celaena already warned us, but Farron is a sadistic piece of shit.
All I wrote for this was fucking Gloriella. Always with the Gloriella.
I know.
Ansel used it, Farron used it, Davis used it in Calm. Like, goddamn.
Apparently, it's the only paralyzing poison that exists.
Apparently.
So. As you just said, Celaena recognizes Gloriella from Ansel's betrayal, but she still holds on to the hope that Arobynn would come save her. Farron continues talking at her, stating she's beautiful, and instead of handing you over, perhaps I'll take you downstairs, but that wasn't part of the bargain, was it? Farron also reveals that thanks to Celaena's passion for revenge, she'd eliminated Jane for him so he could take his place as head crime lord and that he would be handing her over to the king. We know that the one person Celaena is absolutely terrified of is the king, and this immediately makes her panic. Celaena's mind whirls over everything as she attempts to reel in her rising panic. She remembers Wesley's warning then and considers that perhaps the assassin who'd mentioned the window details had, quote, spoon-fed her the details about where to break in and how to break in, and that it had to be him because the alternative? No, she couldn't even think of the alternative. Farron then punches her across the face and says that was for getting blood on the carpet before striding out of the room. Immediately, my brain went to the fact the blood on the carpet thing was what Celaena had remembered when Arobynn had beat her, which obviously just, again, connects Arobynn to all of this.
Oh, yeah. It's a very notable and distinct description to use.
And she still cannot... I think she knows, but she just can't accept it. So
yeah, it's the ultimate betrayal.
Also, she probably has had so many concussions by now.
Oh my gosh, she used to be worried about CTE. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, literally.
That's totally true.
They get punched so much, knocked out all the time, and I'm like, how are you functioning? I just don't understand. How are you assassinating at all?
Lorraine asking the hard questions.
Go see a doctor. I don't know. Chapter 11. Celaena awakens later to a throbbing headache, only to find that she is now in a dungeon cell somewhere. It's been at least 6 hours because she could now wiggle her toes and fingers at least, but the time hasn't failed to dull any of the rage she still feels over Sam's death.
Same.
Ugh, same. I know. Retweet. Celaena takes status of her own physical condition as well as the layout of the dungeon. As she does so, she also reflects on how she had been betrayed by someone who would benefit greatly from her being gone, and that Arobynn still hadn't come to rescue her. Despite this, she still hasn't given up hope that Arobynn would eventually find her, thinking he'd find her. He had to. She begins testing the walls for any loose bits she could use as a weapon, but is interrupted by a guard wearing a dark tunic embroidered with golden thread. This means he had to be a royal guard, and she was indeed in the royal dungeons. The guard gives her a tray of food for dinner and reminds her that this dungeon is impenetrable and those chains are made with Auderlanian steel. With those words, she realizes that she likely wasn't going to get out of these dungeons. And she has a thought. If the betrayer had been able to fool her and Sam and Arobynn, then they'd find a way to keep the King of Assassins from knowing she was in here too. It's in this moment, with Sam now dead, the hopeful girl who had freed slaves from the pirate lord, stolen Assyrian horses in the desert, and felt so alive with possibility from the rooftops of Rifthold, was now gone because she had failed. She eats the bread and cheese, then kicks the tray away before succumbing to the endless roaring silence once again.
Always with the roaring silence.
The roaring silence is deafening. Celaena drifts in and out of silence, listening to the guards talk in between. She overhears a part of the conversation where the guards state the captain of the guard was racing back to Riptold from the Syrian coast with the prince, though he likely won't make it back in time to see her executed. Obviously, this is a reference to Kael.
Mm-hmm.
In another conversation, the guards question whether she's really Celaena Sardathian, considering how young she is. They speculate about her mental state and figure that she couldn't be, but it didn't really matter as long as someone was punished for Jane's death. They also reveal the trial would be closed because the king doesn't want anyone seeing who she really is. And that ends chapter 11. Moving on to chapter 12. 2 days pass in a trance for Celaena, and her silence is interrupted by guards aiming crossbows at her. They throw a rag and a bucket of water at her and instruct her to clean herself up for her trial. The guards then escort her through the castle to a room of stone and polished wood where she is shoved into a chair placed in the middle of the room. In front of her are 12 men seated at a massive table, which this must be the king's council. Celaena decides there was no point in fighting her likely death because she deserved this. For more reasons than she could count, she should never have allowed Sam to convince her to dispatch Farron on his own. It was her fault. All of it.
I
Soon,
mean, it's not really her fault, but
a little bit.
she could have made a lot of different choices.
Yeah. Had she made different choices, Sam may not be dead. So,
there's plenty of blame to go around.
Yeah.
Ultimately, of course, it all goes back to Arobynn, right? He orchestrated this entire thing. So I don't want anyone to think I'm truly blaming Celaena. But I mean, as we discussed, lots of inflection points for them to question what was going on. Not to mention the whole, I don't need an aerial spotter. I can handle this on my own. I mean, there's so many things.
If the rest of the series continues on with anytime she gets into a bind, it's because she didn't listen to her instinct. I am gonna throw some hands because
can have some words.
It's annoying. Yeah.
I know, it really is.
Soon, the King of Auderland enters as well. Celaena refuses to look at him, knowing she wouldn't be able to stay calm if she did. The king takes a seat and then states, I didn't believe it until now, but it seems the guards were not lying about your age. How old are you? Celaena refuses to answer either of his first two questions to her, so he proceeds with the trial. He asks her if she is Celaena Sardathian, and then the long list of charges for all the people she'd killed as Auderland's assassin is read out loud. Celaena thinks about how Arobynn had always made sure everyone knew it was she who had been responsible, and that now it was coming back to bite her in the ass. Hard. They ask if she denies the charges, which Celaena again refuses to answer, and then the king proceeds to announce her sentence. The king stands up to approach her and demands she look at him. She eventually does, and immediately is thrown into panic, noting his black eyes were poised to devour the world. Features were harsh and weathered. No crown rested on his head. She had to get away, had to get out of this room, get away from him. The king asks if she had any final requests, and after she recalls the destruction and terror he had caused to Terrasen and its people 9 years ago, she states, I do. Smiling wickedly, she tells him, make it quick. We know that the king of Auderland is a cruel piece of shit, so rather than deciding to kill her, the king sentences her to 9 lives worth of labor in the salt mines of Endovir, with orders to keep her alive for as long as possible, so she will have the chance to enjoy Endovir's special kind of agony. The council and Celaena are shocked by this decision, but no one says anything as the king turns and walks away. Celaena is then quickly shuffled back to the dungeons, her shackles changed before they lock her up in a prison wagon. From the small window, Celaena watches the city pass by as she's led out of the capital.
So, this is talked about in the beginning of TOG, maybe beginning and mid TOG, but why doesn't the king want anyone to know her true identity? I didn't have as much time to go back and do as much reading as I would have liked. I think the impression I have / the information we're given is that the king is embarrassed that a 16, 17-year-old was the one who was responsible for all these deaths, and he didn't want anyone to know. I don't know. I'm really confused on this point, why he didn't want anyone to know what she looked like and who she was and how young she was. I'm confused by that.
I had the same question because I'm like, who cares at this point? You got her. And honestly, wouldn't it be better if people know who she is? Because then if she ever were to escape or whatever, it'd be really easy to find her and catch her again. So I don't know. I really don't know. But I had a similar question because it seems like such a weird thing to do in this circumstance.
Yeah. Okay, we need to crowdsource this. So maybe we'll make a reel. Lorraine, put it on your to-do list, make a reel, or get on the Reddits and be like, help us. Because I don't understand. I don't know why I'm really fixated on it, but I'm really confused. Because he went to great lengths to ensure that she had a private trial, that basically only the people who were her direct handlers knew who she was. And when she's overhearing all the guards are like, don't even tell your kids or something because the king would see us hanged if we breathe a word of this or whatever. It just doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I really don't know. Which part of me is like, I had this thought before, I think a while ago, and well, maybe we did address it and I'm just forgetting. But do you think it's more related to the fact the king does know who she is, perhaps?
There's no way he knows.
You really don't think so?
He would have had her killed immediately. There's no world in which he knows her true identity. Absolutely not. If that is the case, I can't even wrap my mind around it because it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe this was just one of those weird plot things where they just needed to make it this way so that they could set her up to participate in the champions bracket, because obviously nobody knew who she was. And so Dorian could just get her and none of the other champions would know about it and nobody would think that it's weird or anything for her to be there. But I don't know. I feel like there has to be a different explanation because it's too weird. It's so out of line with what you would do typically in a situation like this. That is one of our outstanding questions. So after Celaena is leaving the city in the prison wagon, we cut to Arobynn Hamel and Warwick Farron standing atop a rooftop. Per usual, obviously, fuck Arobynn Hamel, especially after finding this information out. There is literally no redemption, in my opinion, available for this fan, but they exchange some words before Farron asks, "Why did you do it?" Arobynn just responds, "Because I don't like sharing my belongings."
No words.
Literally no words. I'm like, that was literally your only reason for betraying Celaena and having Sam kill. It's just, I feel like there has to be something else. I just cannot imagine.
Oh, see, it makes perfect sense to me.
Really?
Arobynn, he collects shiny, rare things. Celaena is the ultimate prize. From his perspective, I'm guessing here, but from his perspective, he saved Celaena from a horrible death on the banks of Frozen River. He made her who she is. He gave her all the refinement and privileges that wealth could offer. He trained her. He turned her into Adarlan's assassin, gave her notoriety. And how does she repay him? By hooking up with 17-year-old Sam, his second best assassin, and is like, I'm out and I never want to be bothered by you again. Do you understand? I think he is just so outraged by this, and how dare she be so ungrateful when he made her who she is. And so the only thing he can think of to turn her is to get rid of Sam, have her captured, and then rescue her. Because as Farron says, the plan was for him and the other assassins to rescue her. So then she would feel this cycle of indebtment to him, like, oh, you saved me and come back into the fold. And so to me, it makes perfect sense. This is the ultimate betrayal isn't right, but like the ultimate slap in the face that Celaena could give to Arobynn.
I don't know. Something is just weird. Because if you really wanted Celaena that bad, why not follow through? I guess that's what I don't understand. I can understand the killing Sam part,
Yes.
but it's like, why not follow through on the plan and just get Celaena back into your clutches, quote unquote?
That is a great question. And that is one of my questions about this story, this book, but this story specifically is at this point, he had this grand plan to rescue her from the gallows or whatever. And Farron even points out it's way easier to get her out of a prison wagon. Why not? Like, why not rescue her? And I do wonder, and my best guess to that would be he is really angry at her and he wants her to suffer.
That's kind of what I was
But
thinking.
then a year is a long time. Like a month in Endovir is enough, let alone 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why not rescue her at any point? I definitely feel like we're going to have some scenes of Arobynn where we get some exposition where he kind of explains his thought process. At least, God, I hope so. This character is, it is interesting. I want to know why he does what he does, what his motivations are. So I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Hopefully we do at some point, because otherwise that's going to eat away at me.
I know.
So that concludes our main chapters. And next we have our final little after scene. So Celaena spends 2 days traveling in the wagon. She really blames herself for everything and thinks she had believed she could love Sam and not pay the price. But the Spider Silk had once told her that everything has a price. It would take 2 weeks for her to travel north to Endovir, and Celaena remembers that no one survived Endovir. Most prisoners didn't survive a month. It was a death camp. Sometime later on, Celaena overhears excited whispers and she looks out of her small window to see a white stag standing in a copse of thorns. At this point, they were deep into the oak-walled forest. And obviously, the stag, this is very exciting because it's always been there. And this is the memory that she had recalled when she'd met with Baba Yellowlegs and Calm. Celaena notes the creature's antlers seem to glow in the moonlight, crowning him in wreaths of ivory. And I have some thoughts about this. So we know the white stag is a symbol of Terrasen, so the people would always know how to find their way home. But I just
say it.
I just can't get over the feeling that this has to be. Maybe this is someone we'll meet later.
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
We did think it was.
That maybe it's King Brannon.
I thought we decided that wasn't the case. And then I was disappointed.
I think maybe the conversation was, you're like, this has to be. And I was like, well, it's not confirmed, so we need to wait and see. But no, I definitely remember this conversation, especially once we learned that all Fae can transform into an animal form.
Right. Okay.
Because I remember us having a little debate about, is Brandon still alive? And I'm like, well, they're immortal. Queen Maeve is still alive, blah, blah, blah. And so it's totally possible that it's King Brannon. I mean, I think it is. If I said differently in a previous episode, I was wrong.
Okay. Well, if not that, then I was thinking maybe it's just the spirit of King Brannon, kind of like the Patronus in Harry Potter.
Okay, yeah. There's some symbolic, spiritual magic element.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because obviously they're in the Oakwald Forest, which is the previous home of the Fae. And but in either case, obviously this is hugely symbolic for Celaena. Yeah. Because we learned that she's Aelin, heir to Terrasen and its throne, and the single most capable person who can overthrow the King of Adarlan. So
yeah. Ultimately, it's a symbol of hope.
Celaena bows her head to the stag while keeping its gaze. As they watch each other, she realizes the stag shouldn't be here considering the hunters the king had ordered to kill off all white stags. Yet here he was, glowing like a beacon in the moonlight. She begins to cry, but then hears bowstrings being pulled, and she hoarsely screams, "Run! Run, damn you!" which fortunately gets the stag to sprint away like a bolt of white light weaving through the trees. The arrows all miss, leaving the guards cursing in frustration. And in the silence that follows, Celaena is once again dragged under by the pain and overwhelming fear she feels knowing she was going to Endovir no matter what. I did have a question. So when she screams run, it's italicized, and I was almost wondering if maybe this was more of a mental call out to the stag, because I thought it was weird that none of the guards reacted to her screaming at it. Like, nobody said anything to her. And you'd think that as a prisoner, they would have been like, they got frustrated that the stag ran off, but not frustrated at her for calling at it to run and scaring it off.
Yeah, so I definitely think there's logic in that thought. However, I will say, I think the description is it was a very hoarse, soft cry from not using her voice for so long. So it's possible they didn't hear her. We don't know the relative positions of the guard. As it's mentioned, a lot of them had bows out because they were going to try and kill it. And so maybe they just didn't hear her. Maybe they don't care because she's just a prisoner. So I see what you're saying. I'm not going to discredit some kind of mental connection because obviously we know her identity and how that relates back to terrorists and everything. My impression is that it was italicized to show an emphasis of desperation in her voice.
I could see that. I guess if the stag is a shifted fae, then it probably has really good hearing.
Yeah, that's true.
And anyways, okay, well, that's all I had to say. All right, we just have one more section. So this last scene is titled Beginning. So it's been 2 weeks, and Celaena knows that they've arrived at Endovir when the forest gives way to the rugged terrain of the mountains. Celaena almost gives up at the crushing thought of being in Endovir, but then she feels a gentle breeze that she recognizes. It carries a hint of pine and snow, representing the northern breeze of Terrasen. Elena, are you calling to her? She hears whips cracking in the distance and begins to chant, "My name is Celaena Sardathian," as she slowly stands up. As she chants, the breeze picks up and lets it sweep away the ashes of the dead world of that dead girl. And then there was nothing left except something new, something still glowing red from the forging. She decides she would go in and she would not crumble. She'd tuck Sam into her heart as a reminder of what it felt like to be loved and the possibility of the world before. She completes the chant, "My name is Celaena Sardathian and I will not be afraid," then walks into the salt mines of Endovir to face her fate.
And that concludes the Assassin's Blade.
Concludes the Assassin's Blade.
Wow. That last little, I guess, chapter titled Beginning is really moving. It's very short, but it's nice to see her, even in the face of great adversity, be forged anew, right? This is her crucible, and to go in with the resolve of that she will survive, and she does. And yeah, I'm very happy we read Tab. It was great, but I'm very excited to move into Heir of Fire and see where her fate leads.
As your real, I forget exactly the words for it, but what were the words in the reel?
Oh, yes. For those of you who follow us on social media, I posted a reaction reel to finishing Tab, and it's Loki, if you're an Avengers fan. And he says, yes, very sad. Anyways, got me thinking.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much my reaction. I finished it. I'm like, Lorraine, guess what? I have all these thoughts. Oh, yeah. And Sam died. Oh, well.
Many thoughts. I know. I am excited to get back into the main plot line here, though.
Yes. So. Yeah. I'm also just selfishly excited to do episodes where we only cover 50 to 60 pages instead of 100+ page stories. Because
this is true.
It's a lot of work, a lot of summaries, a lot of information details.
A long time. Yeah.
It does.
Okay. So that concludes our analysis. And now we do have our end of the book wrap up. Let's start with the book rating. How would you rate this book? And what was your overall opinion, likes, dislikes for The Assassin's Blade?
Whew, okay. So rating wise, I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. So here's how I did the math. Assassin the Pirate Lord, 1 star. Assassin the Healer, 1 star. Assassin Desert, 1 star. And then I quickly realized I can't do math. So just take a 3/4 of a star and divide it between the Assassin and the Empire and the Assassin in the Underworld. And that's how I came to 3.75 stars. I think I gave TOG like 4 out of 5. And I think I gave Com 5 out of 5. I really loved the Assassin in the Desert. And I liked the Healer and the Pirate Lord a lot. Underworld and Empire just didn't move the needle for me. They're not bad. I'm not criticizing anyway. Sarah J. Maas is wonderful. And these stories have their place. But for me, I don't know, it didn't move me. It didn't make or break me, So definitely worth the read, definitely important for the series. I would never not recommend it, but I'm not going to be like, oh my God, Tab is my favorite. That's never going to happen. It's never going to
Yeah.
happen. And then kind of similar to the ranking, my absolute favorite story, hands down, no question, is The Assassin in the Desert. I just love that story. I really do. I think it's the best one on so many dimensions. The characters and the character development, just the story is so intriguing and exciting. And I don't know, I just really, really liked it. And then likes and dislikes, I'll make it pretty quick. I think I expressed a lot of my dislikes, specifically for this story, but as a whole for the book, some of those complaints apply across the other stories. But I did really enjoy getting more context about Celaena's character. As I said earlier, these are critical experiences in shaping who Celaena is, and that's important information for us to have. I also love hate Arobynn. He is such an interesting character to me. He's the perfect villain because you love to hate him, right? He's not easy to hate in the way that Rourke Farren is. Rourke Farren is a sadist, a psychopath. He enjoys violence. No one can even summon up a defense for Rourke's actions. But Arobynn, again, not defending him, but there's these gray areas, this confusing feelings you have towards him. And actually, I would really love to know more about him and his backstory. Like, what are his motivations? What is his reasoning for doing things? He's just a very intriguing bad guy. And I really like that. Don't get me wrong, still fuck Arobynn Hamel, but he's really interesting. And I liked that we got more of Arobynn in this book because he is such a well-written, intriguing character. And then dislikes, I said a lot in this episode, so we're not gonna beat a dead horse.
Okay, I thought I was being a little harsh with my rating because I gave it a 4. That was not me.
See, 4 seemed like way too much, but 3 seemed like not enough. So I was like 3.75. That's good, right?
Well, 4 out of 5 is like 80%. So then I was like,
okay.
Yeah. Well, so I gave it a 4, and I said that because I am really totally obsessed with the overarching plot, and I really wanted to know what's going on with the king and how Celaena will fit into the larger picture of things. The individual stories were interesting and definitely helped provide some additional context into Celaena's background and history. But aside from that, it's a standalone book, aside from like a few key details. And each story within the book is a separate experience as well. So I wonder if perhaps my opinion would change once I read more of the series, and if we end up meeting some of the characters again.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It would kind of reframe everything. But for now, I'm going to keep it as a 4 just because other than a few key events, the book as a whole isn't really related to the plot of the rest of the series.
Right.
So that was my thought with that. With that being said, I did think that this was a really wonderful collection of stories. It was a beautiful but emotionally damaging journey to see her grow and go through this cycle of hope, love, and then fear again, all in one book. And I think it was so necessary to get this background on her life prior to where TOG picks up. I really felt there was a similarity in Celaena's experiences in The Assassin's Blade and then from Throne of Glass to Crown of Midnight. Tab felt very personal and individual to Celaena, where she was learning to want freedom for herself. But then Calm took us through the journey of Celaena leveling up from just wanting her own freedom to now wanting freedom for all of Aurelia. So I thought that was an interesting parallel for Celena's character and like a cycle, I guess.
So insightful. Okay, yeah.
Oh, thank you. And then as far as my favorite story goes, I still think The Assassin in the Underworld because it had the action and had the mystery with Donoval's supposed plan, as well as the romance that I obviously love with Celaena and Sam finally meeting their feelings to each other. So,
yeah.
And then, yeah, we talked a lot about the dislikes of this, more so to do with just Celena's behaviors, I guess. But aside from that, I did like it, but I'm ready to to get back into the main series. Again, I do think that the reading order probably would change my opinion of this book.
Same. Yep.
So had we read it either first or maybe after Throne of Glass, then I think the way I experienced it would have been different. But even after Crown of Midnight, it just ultimately feels a little too far removed from the main subplot to feel compelling to me right now. I really did not want to stop after Crown of Midnight. I just wanted to go straight into Heir of Fire. And it was really difficult to then have to pause that plot line and go back to cover things about Celaena's past. So that's really the only thing. And then do you have any predictions or any outstanding questions?
Definitely both. So let me start with my outstanding questions. First thing is, which we discussed earlier in the episode, why does the king want anyone to know her true identity as Celaena Sardathian? That seems weird to me. I don't understand it. Next question. Where is Arobynn Hamel? What is he doing? Who, what, where, when, why? I just want to know. I think I understand why he did what he did for the most part. But I don't understand is why he didn't follow through on his plan to rescue her. And why at no point in the entire year, 365 days she spent in Dovir, he didn't rescue her. And where was he? What has he been doing since she got out? Because she's been out of Indovir after Calm for about at least 6 months. And so in Rifthold, like quite literally in Rifthold. And he never, dropped by. I don't know. I just, Arobynn Hamel. Arobynn freaking Hamel.
What happened to him? Where did he go? Because I don't think he's been chilling in Rifthold this entire time. Like, he clearly went somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Lysandra, actually, even after finishing this story, I still don't understand why Celaena hates her so much based on the events of Tab. Like, yes, they had childhood beef, but it all seems very petty and immature. And I don't really understand why there's continued hatred. If anything, given what we know about Celaena's character and how she feels about like her empathy for slaves or people that are victims of Madame Clarice or Arobynn, right? Like being sort of put in these positions and these quote unquote occupations with no choice. It seems like with some maturity, she should have grown out of that. And so I really don't understand why we hate Lysandra so much. I don't hate Lysandra. She's a bit annoying, but whatever. Another
I don't know
question.
enough about her to hate her.
Yeah.
So
seems weird. Just because in Calm, she's like, she had a long, violent history. So I thought Lysandra was going to be critical and like her betrayal.
I thought she was going to be
something.
like another assassin or something that she competes against or whatever. But
or
like, I feel like the only violent thing that happened was she throws the knife at her head.
Yeah. Or like maybe she was going to lure Sam, with sex and actually surprise he's going to get killed or something. But no, nothing, not even remotely anything like that. She's only in this story for like 3 seconds in the beginning at the theater with Arobynn. It's weird. How and when will Celaena exact her revenge on Arobynn for betraying her? Big one for me. And probably the biggest absolute question I have coming out of this story is, will we see Rolf, Irene, and or Ansel come back? I feel very strongly that yes, we will. But how, when, who, what, where, when, why? The seeds of all those characters are really exciting and interesting to me. Even Rolf, right? Like he's kind of a bad guy, but he kind of doesn't really feel like a real bad guy,
Yeah.
So I want to know if / when they're going to come back.
I agree. I had similar questions. Like you said, I really want to know what the hell happens to Arobynn. We obviously did not see Celaena find out that it was him that had betrayed her. We don't get to see her get revenge either at this point. But obviously I really want to see that happen because he disgusts me and he's vile and I dislike him with my entire sense of self.
Fair enough.
And I also want to know more about Arobynn because I think we get a partial explanation and you feel like you've got enough to understand why he did it, but I still don't feel like that is sufficient enough to me. Like I still get a sense that there is something else going on, something a little more nefarious. I don't know. I guess we'll see, but I don't feel satisfied in the explanation currently. So,
okay.
I am a little disappointed that we didn't get more information about the day Terracin fell also. That is something I really want to know. And how Arobynn came to find her in the first place. I thought we were going to get that info in this book.
Oh my God.
Didn't get it yet. And so that's a huge question that I still have.
I cannot believe I freaking forgot that. You're absolutely right. Now as you're saying it, I'm pretty sure that was one of my predictions. I was like, oh, we're going to get the full story of how she ended up on the banks of the frozen river, how Arobynn found her and all that. You're totally right. And we didn't. And that is very unsatisfactory. That dream, that memory, whatever, is referenced so many times for Celaena's character. Yeah, damn. Do you just not want me to sleep at night? Why are you doing this to me, Lorraine?
Because I got questions.
I thought you loved me.
That's a huge hole that I still need to fill regarding the plot and the sequence of events and everything. And then my other prediction, just like you said, is just, will we see Irene, Ansel, the Spider Silk Merchant? Yeah. Actually not really sure if I feel like the Pirate Lord's going to come up again. If anything, I feel like the Spider Silk Merchant maybe is more likely too.
I should have listed him as well. Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
Prediction-wise, I didn't have a ton. I actually just went back and referred to what my Airfire predictions were after Calm, just because there's no predictions for Airfire based off of Tab. This is not the next book chronologically. Airfire is like way ahead. So again, I still think Erewhon's going to come up somehow. The second book, Calm, really took the wind out of my sails on that.
Yeah.
We talked about this a lot too. Celaena's going to connect with her true self and her magic, and she's going to embrace being Fae and all that entails. And then I really didn't have a lot more predictions because I felt like the world was so open to us leading into Airfire, right? She's going to Wenlin, completely different, not different world, but, you know, different continent. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where it goes. So only one way to find out. Stay nerdy, everyone. And keep on reading.
Nerdy, everyone. Yeah. Oh, but we're not done yet.
No, not yet.
We still have our favorite moments to share.
Yes. Lorraine, what were your favorite moments?
Oh, thanks for asking. So I liked the beginning where when they get back from the fighting pits and Celaena recalls how Sam smelled like her lavender soap. And her whole thought was her expensive lavender soap that she'd once warned him to never use again. He probably had no idea what soap she'd even been scolding him about. She'd have to start hiding her beloved toiletries and leave out something inexpensive for him. Just thought that was funny. Yeah. And then I did like when she takes her dance lesson and plays the pianoforte in the studio. And then after that, she thinks she could leave Rifthold if it meant being free of Arobynn. She could leave behind all these things she loved. Other cities on the continent had libraries and bookshops and fine outfitters, perhaps not as wonderful as Rifthold's. And perhaps the city's heart wouldn't beat the familiar rhythm that she adored, but for Sam, she could leave.
Oh, that's a good one.
I had a lot of romantic lines.
I know, you little softie.
And then the other one that I really like is Sam's line when he says, "The only secret I've borne my entire life is that I love you." And then how after that he tells her "My name is Sam Cortland, I will not be afraid" thing. And obviously we know that becomes a mantra for Celaena later on throughout the rest of the series. And then my last one was a quote from Celaena where she thinks a mixture of pride and wonder and such open affection that she could see the far-off land where they'd find a home, see that future that awaited them, and that glimmer of hope that promised happiness she never considered or dared yearn for.
Damn, Lorraine, yours are all so much better than mine. Ugh, I should have went first. Damn it.
Too bad. What were your favorite moments?
Well, mine were less, I don't know, sweet and hopeful. I like when Sam calls her out on being a bougie girl and she thinks she could rough it, but her heart lay in luxury and fine clothes and delicious food and its exquisite furnishings. I was like, oh, same girl. I am the bougie one in my family. You can't tell based on clothes and stuff, but I'm bougie. And then I like when Celaena is thinking about what she wants when she and Sam move, and she thinks she'd have to find another dance instructor once they moved. More than that, a studio with a decent pianoforte player. And the city would have to have a library too, a great, wonderful library, or a bookshop with a knowledgeable owner who could make sure her thirst for books was always sated, and a good clothier, and perfumer, and jeweler, and confectionery.
It just goes on and
it's
on.
Like, girl, your standards are a little high.
She just wants everything.
Yes, because like in that moment, she's like thinking about what she really can't live without, and you're like, a perfumer and a jeweler. You can't live without a fancy jeweler. It's so funny. Well, we know she's a bougie girl. And then last but not least, when Sam was like, oh, you'll be packing whatever. And she simply responds, I hate packing. And that is so painfully relevant to me right now. I was quite literally packing all day before we recorded this. I'm literally moving tomorrow at like 8 a.m. And so when she said that, I was like, I feel that so deep. in my soul.
Yep.
And so just a nice little parallel for Celaena and I. Although, unlike Celaena, I did pack all my shoes.
Good. Excellent. No
Yes.
shoes left behind.
I feel like all of our listeners will find this very funny. So, as we've discussed, I am working on a schedule for the rest of the year for Air of Fire, Queen of Shadows, as well as Onyx Storm and Iron Flame and all that. And so when I went to Target, I needed to get Air of Fire and Queen of Shadows because I needed the page count so I could start roughly outlining what chapters we'll be covering. And when I was at Target, I couldn't find a singular Air of Fire. And so all I could find was one of the box sets that had all 8 books. And I was like, it was 20% off. And you know what? I've been going through a lot of shit. You know, as you guys have listening know, I have a lot going on. I was like, treat yourself. I deserve this. And so the reason I started telling you this is because actually in my office, in the room I'm in right now, it's just full of like essentials that I didn't put in boxes, like stuff from my pantry and cleaning supplies and just things I need immediately, like my kids' clothes, diapers, etc. And I was moving stuff around and packing. My sister was helping me. And she took my new box set of Throne of Glass and she put it in a box. And I was like, no, take that out. And she's like, you don't want to pack it? I said, no, baby. That's going in the car with me. That is an immediate essential, okay? Yeah. I don't want to have to be looking for that in a box. That's going in the front seat buckled up.
Yes.
Okay?
Absolutely. Front row. Yeah.
And as you guys know, we have never read the series. We know you're getting spoiler-free reactions here. But as I was just looking at the spines of the books, I noticed that each book gets thicker and thicker and thicker. So just buckle up, guys, because you guys are in for a long ride with us.
Oh, no.
And more importantly, Lorraine, buckle up. You're in for a long ride with me.
Yeah, those books get real thick by the end.
Real thick.
And I texted Addison about this. I swear to God, the font has gotten smaller too.
It seems
so
like it.
Not only is the page count longer, but the font is smaller too. So hefty, dense books.
Yeah, I think Kingdom of Ash is 1,000 pages by itself. 1,000 pages. So, but you know what? We're not going to borrow tomorrow's trouble, okay?
Yeah.
Dude, it's like 6 months with us. Oh my God.
Just on that one book. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord.
But yeah. Okay.
All right.
We'll not drag this out any longer. Thank you guys for sticking with us if you're still here.
Yes. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Book Dump Fantasy Podcast. If you're loving the show, then check us out on social media through the links below. And yeah, that's all we've got for you guys today. So stay nerdy, everyone. And we'll catch you all next week for our very first episode of Air of Fire. Bye.
Bye. And stay tuned for some bloopers. Welcome to the BookTube Fantasy Pop. It says it every time on Descript. It says BookTube. I'm like, what the
BookTube?
BookTube Fantasy.
Bucktooth Fantasy.
The Bucktooth Fantasy. Okay, so really quick little. It's so sad.
I fuck.
Whoa.
I hate Arobynn Hamel.
How she ended up on the banks of the frozen ribbit.
Right.
The ribbit. The second book, Calm, really took the winds out of my sail on that. The winds out of my sails? Wait, the wind out of my sails on that.